This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Tonight from Daytona International Speedway, we kick off a historic 10th anniversary season of NASCAR's longest-running esports championship. With new teams, new faces, and new stakes, the 2019 campaign is slated to be the most competitive that we have ever seen. It all starts tonight with 250 miles on the high banks of the World Center of Racing, next on the iRacing Esports Network.
It's decision time, NASCAR fans. Who gets you the points? Who gets you the wins? Who gets you the bragging rights? Who gets you the championship? Sign up and play today at NASCAR.com/fantasy.
$100,000 starts tonight from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. We say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to the season opener of the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. We're so happy to be with you once again for another season of action on RaceSpotTV and the iRacing Esports Network, with Hugo Louise in the production trailer and Rennie Cheneth alongside myself. My name is Evan Pisoko. Thank you for being with us this evening. Randy, there's been a ton of changes since we were last with everybody back at the end of last season. Homestead, Miami, where Ray Alfala took home a record 4th career series championship. Certainly we'll talk about that and everything else as the night goes on and we start to work into this 2019 campaign. But first and foremost, we've got 100 laps at Daytona International Speedway in front of us.
And what a better way to kick off a season opener, coming into an entire season where so little things remain the same. There's more money, there's new teams, new sponsors. And the one thing that remains constant, this series kicks off at Daytona International Speedway for 100 laps. We've seen some fantastic season openers here, and I think we're going to be in for a good one once again tonight with $1,000 up for grabs.
Yes, certainly that's one of the biggest single points to note is not only are we talking about an excess of $112,000 cash in this prize pool for 2019, but race by race payouts begin. And of course, starting this evening with the biggest one at Daytona International Speedway, it is $1,000 to tonight's race winner, $500 for a second place finish, and $250 to the driver who finishes in third. It'll be $500 to win, $250 for second, and $100 for third as the rest of the season works on. But you take a look at our 2019 calendar, a lot of changes from last season. A couple of ones that we noted, Talladega is joining the schedule as well. Bristol back on it for the regular season finale. And of course, we will have that four-race playoff that begins on August the 27th with the all-new Charlotte Roval tucked in there. So a little bit of massaging from what we saw just 1 year ago, but the calendar length overall does stay the same.
Yeah, the length stays the same, but like you said, those are actually some really important changes in the schedule. It might be one of the smaller shifts that we've seen from everything in regards to this series coming into this year, but in all honesty, having two plate tracks on the schedule where you only have one of those can potentially go for a drop week, that's hugely important. Bristol being the cutoff race before you get in the playoffs, and then not having a single cookie cutter style racetrack in the playoffs, as well as the fact that one of those races is a road course, is absolutely huge with the way this championship will potentially play out.
Certainly going to be a ton of fun, and then you also have your tracks that we're used to going to, like Daytona here to kick off the calendar, and the Texases, the Charlottes, and the Chicagos, races that we have come to love over the years as we get this 10th season of eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series action underway. Another big point that has happened over the offseason, in fact, one of the biggest talking points headed into 2019, Randy, the new teams that are joining us here for this campaign. We had our draft just a couple of weeks ago. If you didn't tune into that one, we'll kind of do our best here to quickly recap how all of this is going to work out for you. But 12 all-new teams in the series, and it started with Ray Alfala being selected #1 overall by Wood Brothers Racing. The other teams in this series include Flipside Tactics, Junior Motorsports, G2 Esports, Joe Gibbs Racing, Williams Esports, along with Burton Kligerman Esports, ETG Doherty Racing, Clint Boyer Racing, Roush Fenway, Richmond Raceway Esports, and the Renegades. All new teams, familiar faces, but certainly adding to the higher stakes.
Definitely is. You'll see all new paint schemes and all new sponsors to go with that. Some of the classic NASCAR paint schemes from the history of that championship are here. You have Bobby Zielinski in a number 18 Interstate Batteries car. You, of course, have Ray Alfala in that famous white and red number 21 Motorcraft machine. Absolutely gorgeous cars up and down this field. And, of course, the all-new schemes coming as well from the esports teams, having some unique looks to themselves as well.
And what you're taking a look at live now is the drivers warming up under 10 minutes left in the practice session. Qualifying already completed. We'll let you know the full running order once we do go trackside and get set to go racing tonight for 250 miles. But all of these drivers are taking advantage of these final 20 minutes or so to get a little bit more practice in. Of course, they got some practice in if you were with us just a week ago with the Dash. We had a little bit of preseason Thunder action. Drivers were able to kind of figure out how these new alliances and, of course, what the latest draft model is going to look like when they are out there and onto the racetrack. So going to get every little bit out of the practice that you can. I know that it is going to be I think a learning period for both us and everybody tuned in, Randy. Even if you've been tuned in for the series for quite some time, identify faces with new names and, of course, new looks. Also, though, for maybe if you're tuned in as a first-time viewer, we're happy to have you. It's going to be a ton of fun seeing how 2019 plays out.
It is definitely, I think, really important for these drivers to get out and get some experience with everyone on track. Because, of course, like you said, you have some new cars, some new paint schemes. Some of the usual names may have different looks to them, and there's new names as well coming in from that pro season with 20 new drivers coming in and taking grid slots as well. Getting yourselves out there and getting some nice last-second draft practice before we go green for 250 miles is very, very good and I think really smart.
And it wouldn't be a season opener without 250 miles around the virtual Daytona International Speedway. And as we work closer to the green flag, happy to be joined by the president of Daytona International Speedway, Chip Wile. Chip, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to get our 2019 campaign kicked off very shortly. I know you and your team at the Speedway are very busy as well. What does the prestige of the Daytona 500 mean to the NASCAR as a sport and as well motorsports in general?
Well, no question that the Daytona 500 is one of the most prestigious auto races in all of motorsports, but great way for us to kick off the 2019 campaign. There's so much excitement and enthusiasm around NASCAR this season, and couldn't think of a better way to kick it off than at Daytona for 500 miles on Sunday afternoon with the Daytona 500.
Certainly a little bit easier for us. We load up the iRacing sim and we're ready to rock and roll. What's involved, though, on your side of things with your team getting Daytona ready for such a global stage?
Well, you know, we live on the global stage, and certainly with the Rolex 24 happening and early January, you know, there's a lot of preparation that goes on that starts well into last year. You know, we start getting ready for the Rolex 24 and the Daytona 500, you know, last September, October, November, and I feel like we've done a really good job continuing to grow all of our events, but the Rolex 24 is certainly one on the calendar that we've been able to generate a lot of interest around of. And then as soon as we get done with the Rolex 24, all eyes and all of our preparations go into the Daytona 500. There's so much to do to make sure that we prepare and get ready for our sport's biggest event.
We're celebrating our 10th season this go-around of this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series. It's really changed the media landscape and involvement for a fan as sim racing and esports continues to grow. How is iRacing and this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series helping shape the next generation of fans for the industry?
Well, there's no question that the job you guys are doing is certainly generating more fans for us at the racetrack. And I can tell you, I've been in this business for 19 years. We used to use the iRacing platform, and I know teams continue to use it, to get our drivers prepared for races. So as our rookies were going to racetracks for the first time, we required them to come to the race shop and to get on one of our simulators through your platform to understand the braking points, to understand where they needed to lift, to understand what they needed to do from a bump perspective. Your platform is truly world class, and we all can benefit from that. And you see drivers like William Byron who have come out of your series that are now going to be part of our national stage. Heck, William Byron sitting on the pole for the 2019 Daytona 500. You should be proud of that as an iRacing community.
We've certainly seen a lot of faces in recent years start to make that transition. You mentioned Sunday. You know, we're excited to get our Tuesday night action kicked off, but of course everybody wants to see the Daytona 500 coming up this weekend. If people are still interested, can they still get tickets to Sunday's race?
Yeah, as a reminder, the last 3 years we've sold out of the Daytona 500. We're really proud of that since we opened the Daytona Rising Project. Brand new facility that really represents our brand and all the things that the Daytona 500 means to our sport. But if your watchers tonight or folks that are participating in the race still are planning on coming today to the Daytona 500, I would encourage them to get tickets today, Daytona500.com, or by calling 1-800-PIT-SHOP. Two great ways to make sure you don't miss the 61st running of the Great American Race.
We're about 4 minutes away from getting underway ourselves, so we'll let you get out of here, Chip. Have a safe weekend, you and your entire team. We look forward to the race on Sunday. We appreciate you giving us some time as well this year to chat, and hopefully we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Good luck tonight.
One more big thanks to Chip Wile, president of Daytona International Speedway, where the big show is on Sunday, the Daytona 500. It is our turn, though, go to the virtual high banks, and now just minutes away, Randy, you continue to see all the action on the racetrack right now. Drivers still trying to get that little bit of practice. You notice the sun coming in and out of the clouds. That is something that we're going to notice a lot more of in the 2019. The continuing dynamic weather with iRace, and of course now with day-night time transitioning throughout the day. Just one more added element to make things over here much more exciting. But I'm just looking at it. Looks like about 37 cars have put down a time in practice. Certainly looks like track time valuable.
Definitely is. I don't think there's anything more valuable than track time getting into a series like this. But you're right, talking about the really truly dynamic weather we have now with the clouds coming in and out and potentially day to night transitions going in a little bit later into the season. Things are going to be really, really changed up from what we've seen in the past. I mean, we've talked about that the last couple seasons. What with the dynamic track surface actually taking heat from the cars. We've seen that as well with the dirt racing that's come into the sim in the last couple of years. But this is really the last sort of special touch that we needed. And if we can get some races that start the day and run into the nighttime for this, it's going to completely change the way drivers have to approach these races, change the setups on the cars, and it's going to be fantastic to watch as we get deeper into this championship.
Let's talk more about what's going to be on the line for 2019. We mentioned out the race payouts, the biggest being tonight, $1,000 to the winner, $500 to our second place finisher, and $250 to the driver who finishes in third. Well, that's only a fraction of our $112,000 cash prize pool for 2019. Previously, the champion would walk away with $10,000. Well, a good way to put it. Ray Alfala's got 4 of those. He can tally that same number if he wins. 2019, this time around, the champion will get $40,000 in prize money, plus any weekly racers that are made over the course of 2019. And as it has been every year, that'll also include a trip to Homestead, Miami for championship weekend in November. It'll be recognized on the stage, and it doesn't hurt to come to the NASCAR championship ring in the trophy as well. So all of that stays, but certainly up in the ante with the prize money.
Definitely is, and that's really the big thing you're talking about. I mean, pretty much a $42,000, $43,000 minimum if you win this championship. I don't think you're going to be taking this championship without winning a few races, and it's going to be really fun to watch. If we have someone that happens to walk this championship and dominate the whole way, you may not be far off from $50,000, $60,000 going someone's way come the end of this thing.
Of course, we look forward to tonight specifically. 100 laps at board at Daytona, as it has always been in this season opener. 250 miles start to finish, so half the length of what you'll see in Sunday's 500. A lot of cars, a lot of new faces as well. Not only are faces jumbled up, you know, drivers who may have been teammates before, now separated. Some of the teams did a good job at trying to keep drivers together. Of course, we'll make note of that as this race goes on. But this is a long race to go. About 2 hours of racing sit ahead of us this evening, and drivers obviously very into it for the last couple of years, but now we're talking about putting cash incentives on the line on a per race basis. I'm curious just how patient are all of these drivers going to be. Looks like a lot of guys getting in a last minute pit road entry test. If we do have some green flag pit stops this evening, you take a look at some of the cars out on the racetrack. Jake Nichols, one of the Joe Gibbs Racing drivers, he's out there pretty much all by himself in his number 20 Toyota. There's a lot on the line, but I think it has to be patient. You got to get yourself through. If first to finish, you must finish first. So, you know, if you're going to be able to get to the end of this race, want a shot at the race win, you got to be around. Let's see what happens in the opening 50 and as well in a 40 car field, just how critical qualifying is going to end up being.
That's going to be a really big thing, like you said, where you start. We saw in the test race last week, though, at the same time, some drivers opting trying to be patient, going to the back of the field, and we actually had our first big incident of that 50-lap race happen at about the midway point. So there's no such thing as a safe place to be necessarily in a pack of cars here going around Daytona, but I think you're absolutely right. For these longer races, you have to play your patience a little bit. You have to know when to get aggressive, especially like you said, when you're trying to go for that money. But we got cars gridding for the first time here in 2019.
It is time. Let's go trackside and take a look at your RaceSpotTV starting grid for tonight's Daytona 250. For the third consecutive time to play tracks, the number 16 of Chris Overland for Wood Brothers Racing. He is starting on pole position this evening. Bested Michael Guest by just 2/100ths of a second. Guest will start on the outside of the front row in his Roush Fenway Racing number 17 Ford. Back on row number 2, Earl T. starts tonight in third position for G2 Esports. Bobby Zelensky to his outside P4 in the Joe Gibbs Racing entry. Keegan Leahy tucks in line behind. It'll be the number 5 starting spot for him. Nicholas Shelton rolls from P6. On the outside of row 3 for Clint Boyer Racing. Behind them, Ryan Luzes starts 7th this evening. Garrett Lowe is 8th. And back on row 5, it'll be Zach Novak at P9 and Taylor Hurst rounding out your top 10.
Jimmy Mullis and Brad Davies will roll off on road number 6 with Chris Shearburn and Michael Conti on row 7. Nick Ottinger and Brian Schoenberg will make up road number 8 with Matt Busa and Cody Bias on road number 9. And Phil Diaz and Casey Tucker, they'll round out your top 20.
Kane Coates can end up 21st for this. That'll put him with Dylan Duvall, 21st and 22nd. Casey Kerwood and Blake Reynolds, 23rd and 24th. Nathan Lyon and Adam Benefiel on the same row, P25 and 26 on row 13. Michael Guerrilla starts this race in 27th position. Malik Ray brings the Richmond Raceway Esports entry off 28, with Brandon Kictal, series debut, P29. Christian Chalander for JTG Doherty Racing rounds out your top 30.
Couple other debuts back here. Jake Nichols on 31st in row 16, and starting alongside him, defending series champion, 4-time Ray Alfala in 32nd. Eric Smith and Timmy Hill round out row number 17 with Ben Nelson and Logan Krebs row 18. Ashton Crowder and Ryan Lowe on row 19, and Corey Vinson will round out our 39-car field tonight.
Look top to bottom at your RaceSpotTV starting grid. Ready to rock and roll for the first 250 miles of the year, Randy. I give you the impossible task of thinking what we're going to see tonight.
We're going to see some crazy racing. We're going to see people get aggressive. We're going to see some iconic paint schemes, mixing it up with some new names and some new teams here in the NASCAR ether. And this is going to be fantastic. And the pace car gets ready to peel off onto pit road.
It's a new era in the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series, and it starts right here and right now. Let's go racing from Daytona. Green flag in the air on 2019. It is Chris Overland through the gears for the first time to turn 1.
Look at that. Immediately, Michael Guest tucking under that rear spoiler of that 16 Wood Brothers Ford Motorcraft machine. You see everyone trying to jockey down to the bottom of the racetrack. I see one car of your leaders really still fighting up top. That's Nicholas Shelton, another car mid-pack. That's actually the 8 of Michael Conti, who's already hooked up with his junior motorsports teammate of Brad Davies. But as I say that, Brad sort of bails on him and leaves that 8 car out there. So look for those two. I think those might be the closest teammates you have in the mid-pack. They are probably going to try to work hard and get themselves pushed forward. You also have Jarl Tien as well as Keegan Leahy. They're only separated by a car out here now near the front of your field.
They're pretty close as well. Conti was able to get in line behind his teammate mid-pack, so everybody getting single file now for the completion of lap number 1, and the first lap led does go to that number 16 of Chris Overland. Starting to see the separation that we expect early off of the restarts. Doesn't matter if it's lap 1 or lap 91, the outside not the place to be. Now certainly you'll see a lot more of a push back later in the race for the cars trying to stay up top, but it was certainly the objective right off the get-go there. Get down in line and protect your position to make sure that you get your money's worth out of your qualifying effort. You go on board with Dylan Duvall right now. He's the first car up on the outside of the racetrack, leading that very far back outside line. He was scored 23rd at the stripe last time through. Certainly we'll start to see some cars filling up top in front of him, but for now he's very lonely at the back, and you can see the inside line working well.
Yeah, the inside line is working pretty much flawlessly, as you might expect. Dylan, one of the independent drivers, trying to push his way forward on the outside, and it's not going well because he's getting no help on that upper groove. And I'm not really surprised by this at all. I think you're going to see a lot of this, at least through the first half to first 3 quarters of this race. It's really going to be those last 25 to 20 laps that I think people are going to get very, very aggressive. Look for those pit stops once we get to around 20 to 30 laps to go for drivers to come down pit road, make those final stops, and that's when the aggression levels are really going to heat up. We've seen people in the past, Evan, get aggressive through this first stint and then make mistakes on pit road. I'd rather make sure I don't make mistakes those mistakes on pit road, come out with 20 to go somewhere around mid-pack, and then be able to push my way forward.
Number 3 wide now, 2 sets deep in the middle of the pack. It was the 80 of Cattell who got stuck down below that double yellow line. Look at that, 3 wide in the middle of all of this. The number 51 of Eric J. Smith. You've also got the number 21 of a sheet of Ray Alfala. All of that started when the 80 got stuck low. You can't pass down there, so he had to back off, get back in line, and of course nobody's going to lift to let him in. So a couple of drivers tried to jump on that. They survived the 3 wide for the moment, though. As you see, it ends at at 2x2 throughout the middle of the field here. Now at that outside lane, still led by Duval. That's the red 42 on the outside of the racetrack, but they have some more cars in line, and maybe now that outer lane can start to build a tad of momentum. No news up front. The way they started 1 through 5, still in order. It's Overland, Gastian, Zelensky, and Leahy.
19 car, Casey Tucker got a big shot from the rear going into turn 1. We almost lost about half the field going through turn 1 and 2. Fantastic save from the driver of that number 19 car. Do you see that upper groove start to gain momentum because of that? The 42 at Dylan Duval is no longer going to lead it, as Cody Bias in the 24 is going to hop up to that upper line and try to pull right alongside with the 55 of Brian Schoenberg. That upper groove starting to gain a bit of momentum, and I see the Junior Motorsports teammates. They're thinking of jumping up to that top side, I think, as well.
Very seldom is there a reward for the drivers who stay up on the outside of the racetrack and make it happen, because typically it is, as you said, somebody who sees the momentum coming, jumping up in front of it, and they tend to reap the benefits of all of the hard work for those other drivers. So now it's Shearburn in the 36, and you can see the 8 machine kind of half committing to Michael Connie. They don't want to leave his teammate Brad Davies, so he'll stay low, but in front of them, Mullis to the outside, Zach Novak, all of this spearheaded by Taylor Hurst. So the 2 wide now, creeping up and into the top 10 with the 74 now at the forefront.
Let's see what's going to happen as well. Keegan Leahy is going to be the next driver that starts getting overlapped by this outside line. I think if Keegan hops up, you can expect to see Jarl Tien likely do the same, and potentially even Bobby Zielinski, and that's what they're going to do. Look at that big gap you have on that outer groove. That's going to slow down both Chris Overland and Michael Guest. Look for that outside run right here to get a big push, big head of steam. We might see our first lead change of the season here coming in favor of the 66.
He's going to have a long run down the Daytona Super Stretch, and it may just be good enough for Jarl Tien, who drops low into turn 3 for the first lead change we have seen this evening. But is he even going to lead at the stripe? Because now it's Bobby Zielinski leading the outside, pushed by Tien's teammate Keegan Leahy. The race to the start-finish line will go in favor to the inside, and Jarl Tien has his first lap led of 2019. I have to think, as you go on board and look at the clear track it out in front of Jarl Tien there. You look behind him, see left side of your screen there, top row, second car in line, teammate Keegan Leahy. I've got to think those two are trying to get together somehow. We'll see. Maybe that 62 can push the 18 up and away, that they can get hooked up. And we mentioned it right off of the bat, one of the closer team pairs we are seeing on track so far. Of course, the Junior Motorsports cars a little bit closer together towards the mid-pack, where all of this outside line action really started from.
One of the other things to actually potentially think about, Evan, when you talk about maybe alliances between some of those teams, you look at some of the sponsorship on the cars, most notably Wood Brothers. One of the Gibbs cars has it, as well as one of those G2 cars. Many of those drivers coming from VRS, and that company definitely supporting the team with logos being on the cars. So look for the likes of Chris Overland, Ray Alfala, Bobby Zielinski, and Keegan Leahy to work together, and potentially even the other teammates as well as Jake Nichols and Jarl Tien being associated with those drivers as well, to actually really work together. They may only be, spread out across 3 teams, but the 6 of those drivers do have some form of linkage in terms of sponsorship running on those cars.
And now we see we kind of get stuck in the side-by-side, and the lead pack is certainly growing strong as they sit at a caution flag. First issues on the night, back in the pack and slow. It looks like that's Corey Vincent, one of the cars slow. He is the number 27 machine. Looks like also involved maybe in this incident. We'll take a second look, and there it is on the RaceSpotTV replay. He and the 3 car getting together. That was Vincent. After looked like a big checkup, he moved high to avoid it, and the 3 machine just a little bit late on reaction as well, moving up to the high side of the racetrack.
And it's an unfortunate incident there. Then that started actually a few cars ahead of them with actually Casey Tucker. We saw that 19 car actually nearly lose it through 1 and 2. I think he got tight through 3 and 4, had to check up, started a bit of an accordion effect behind, and those guys I think really didn't see what was happening in front of them. No really way 2 was as far up ahead of him as it was, and just a shot to the rear end basically spins that Renegade's car of Corey Vincent around and puts us under caution for the first time this season.
First yellow flag of 2019 comes about 9 laps into this Daytona 250. It'll give us our first opportunity to pace around the racetrack, and certainly would expect a flock of cars to head down to the pit lane for service. First time through, big movers and all of that. Taylor Hurst ends up going P10 to P5. One of the few drivers in the top 10 to be able to make a splash. We'll see, though, as pit road opens. There's a bit of a hesitation and a split call. Not everybody agreeing, almost 50-50 on the decision.
Wow, really, really surprising. Normally you see at the first caution almost everyone come down pit road, but this one might be a little bit interestingly timed. Maybe able to play some strategy for some of these drivers. And I was just talking about the fact that those with VRS logos might be working together, and see immediately some of them immediately not doing so, but Zelensky and Overland going with the opposing strategies. But now how will the track position work out here? Oftentimes you want to be up front at Daytona to avoid some of those incidents like the one we just saw, but a lot of those fast cars are going to be rolling off mid-pack. I suspect that we're going to see some more second groove action with those drivers who are getting set sort of to the mid-pack on back after coming down for 4 fuel and tires.
Certainly, it depends on how the caution flags play out over the course of this race, but you might not immediately think a 10-lap difference is going to be the make or break point. However, it is sometimes, I mean, even for the driver at the back of the field, safer to just come down it anyways. But your own team was about halfway down to the pit lane, dumped out at the last second, so he was certainly thinking about it, and this gives a good opportunity, I would have thought, for him and his teammate to get hooked up together. However, Keegan Leahy ends up about P6 in line, so certainly all of that, I think, has to play into effect of what drivers are thinking. You take a look at a little bit of a split screen on board here. Brad Davies on the right-hand side of your screen, Chris Overland on the left-hand side of your screen as they take it easy at about 80 miles an hour here under caution to flying conditions. The cars that involved in that incident, Corey Vincent with a good little bit of damage. Doesn't look all that bad, though. Michael Grillia's front end is pretty torn up, though. I don't think it's going to end up being terminal damage on any of those cars, but certainly those cars will never be back to 100%. And while we do say the Daytona, the great equalizer race, a race that because of the draft anybody can win it, it's certainly going to be a lot more difficult with a beaten and battered race car only a 10th of the way through.
It might honestly be one of those situations, Evan, that we've seen in the past where those cars that are heavily damaged are likely just going to have to be pusher cars because they're not going to cut through the air nearly as cleanly or efficiently as those drivers with good and clean noses on the front of them. So it's going to be a talking point once we get in there. I've seen them several times in the past, those damaged cars be able to work their way to the front, but they'll often be the cars that you'll see finishing 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, somewhere in that region, pushing someone to a win rather than actually getting that win themselves just due to the lack of top speed they have.
The lights go out on top of the iRacing.com official pace car. Race start will come up next time by 12 laps complete. Still going to have 88 laps to go in this Daytona 250. Updated running order. We'll see Jarl Tien and Bobby Zelensky on the front row. You want to talk about some iconic paint schemes. Zelensky certainly in the number 18 machine. The Interstate Batteries Toyota, well-known paint scheme around these parts. So good to see that car on track with us. And, you know, the likes of Michael Guest and Ryan Lewis, some of our other drafted drivers just back there. They're going to be 3rd, 4th. Keegan Leahy will round out your top 5 for this upcoming restart. I would expect a lot of the same compared to the first start of the race. The one difference is your control car can dictate the start with no teammate there. I wouldn't advise getting too far out in front of the pack. I would expect drivers to want to get low once again.
I don't know. I actually am unsure. We saw that upper groove really come in strong near the end of that first run, but when we got that caution, I would not be surprised if drivers are a little bit more aggressive at trying to hold that outside line and maybe not just jump right down to the bottom. I think that upper groove is racier than they thought they'd be.
See what the call is going to be. Pace car down at infield in the hands of Jarl Tien as we get set to go back green. First caution flag of the year now behind us. Good gap for the 66. Might not want that much space back to the 17, though. We'll see as they head off back into turn 1 and up to the gears. Certainly the outside line sticking around much longer than what we saw the first time through, but it will end up being Tien first time through the quarter. Now as the rest of the drafting help catches up to him.
I've had a couple drivers in that upper groove drop down, though, so if you look at that upper line, you have Bobby Zelensky as well as the 36 of Chris Shearburn. They're just working as a tandem right now, trying to push their way down this Daytona super stretch as they head off in towards 3 and 4. See that sort of second pack of cars behind, about 10 or so car lengths. They're actually getting split up 3 wide nearly. You see Malik Ray in that mix as well as Taylor Hurst with the car up top. Jimmy Mullis, Dylan Duvall as well, all in that upper groove. They work down into the tri-oval for the 13th time tonight. And still, it's just those 2 cars at the head of that upper groove that are slowly working their way back.
Going to work their way up through. Look at the 18 machine up there on the outside line right now. Pretty much all on his own is Bobby Zalenski. Does he tuck in line in front of the 36? Yes, he does. If he wasn't able to find that spot, that might not have ended as well with only 8 cars up on the outside. So they definitely tried that outside right off the restart, much more than they did on the initial start of this race. But I think you do need a couple of laps under your belt to get that momentum built up. So eventually the lead cars do tuck down in line, and you see Zalenski now comfortably tucked in line in the number 7 position. The outside is led by Eric J. Smith with Malik Ray, Taylor Hurst. They sit just inside of the top 15 or so as they try to make some noise on the outside. Shearburn kind of thinking about it. Doesn't commit though as he tucks back down low.
It's one of those things you really have to commit to, isn't it? You can't really, you got to either make the decision either way and make it definitive. He's still not really sure. He's kind of going to the middle as they work down the back straightaway as the driver of this number 36 car. And as they head in towards turn 3, I think he's pretty much made his mind that he doesn't want anything to do with the top. And you know what? The driver of that number 90 Sunoco Toyota made the same exact decision as Malik Ray cuts down to the bottom as we follow on board with Nick Ottinger and cut over to Malik running in that 12th spot in the Richmond Raceway Esports machine.
Malik Ray making his run into the 90 Sunoco Racing Toyota for Richmond Raceway Esports. He's coming up on the number 50 to Eric J. Smith, who, with lack of drafting help up on the outside, really has to pinch down for the side draft. And the 90 machine's going to throw him a lifeline there. 51 tucks in line as you go on board with him on the left-hand side of your screen. And that is a saving grace. All to the outside goes Ray now, but the 51 wants to go with them. So maybe the 90 trying to bait the 51 out of that spot. He'll go back down low, squeeze back into that position. Although the 51 machine's going to have help now because the 74 Hurst is back.
That's a bit of a cheeky move, isn't it? Just sort of slicing and dicing. It'll be interesting to see how this pans out as we get deeper and deeper into this event. Daytona and Dega, the 2 plate tracks, always talking about what kind of friends you have and who can help you work your way to the forward of the forward parts of these fields. And I think doing that to someone that probably ticks someone off your potential friends list might put them on the block list, matter of fact, and you may not get help from that driver a little bit later on that you otherwise would have maybe expected to get if you hadn't have done that. One driver that's really worked their way forward, though, is that number 21 car of Ray Alfala, pushing that number 20 up on that outside groove. That is, of course, Jake Nichols in that Gibbs car. And, of course, that's something we talked about, Evan, the fact that those two might be people that work together here tonight. We see the 21 pushing the 20.
Yeah, certainly get together right now as they sit mid-pack, so not a surprise that those two drivers have found one another. And, you know, in the drafting where you need help, this is one of those situations where seniority in this series definitely helps. Maybe a series veteran can get away with a move like that more so than maybe a rookie who's making his first start here in 2019. And, you know, to be clear on some of the new faces, maybe new for this specific top level of esports, but certainly not new faces in the sim racing community to be able to even have a chance to qualify for this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series. You have to obviously race your way through to an A-class license on the service, compete in the Pro Series. So all of these drivers pretty much know each other regardless of how many years they've been racing. But look at the move up in the front of the field. Outside goes Ryan Luza. He jumps up in front of Keegan Leahy, and here comes the 17 as well. So Jarl Tien making no friends at the inside. He'll now get help from Conti and Davies, but down the back straightaway, it is Michael Guest to the lead. No room for Luza. Yes, now as the 66 gives him some space.
Oh, we may not be out of the woods yet. That's some big checkups at the head of the field. That's going to be according the entire of your mid-pack. We're somehow able to deal with it, though, and Michael Guest is going to get scored as your race leader as they head through the tri-oval as we approach 1/5 distance. What a move by Michael Guest, being behind the wheel of that Ford Fusion. He bailed on the bow tie that was leading, got pushed his way up by the driver of that Camry, Mr. Ryan Michael Luza. And, man, what a move. That's one of the best passes I think I've seen on these plate tracks in a long, long time. But here comes Bobby now pushing Keegan Leahy in that 62.
It's certainly showing that you need to be aggressive. We continue to see Leahy and Tien be around each other in those G2 Esports entries, but not be able to get hooked up quite yet on board with the Joe Gibbs Racing entry of Bobby Zalenski, trying to make the outside line work. And I'm not surprised if Luza wants to go up top. Instead, it'll be Leahy back to the bottom. There's the 53, Ryan Luza. No stranger to wanting to make some noise happen, but he's not necessarily getting the support right now. The 18 goes back to the inside, and that might not help out. I think Luza, who was comfortably in line at P2, takes that gamble to go to the outside, and you can see how quickly he starts to slide back on the outside line. He'll be picked up by Shearburn. That's the red and yellow 36 machine, but still puts him in a little bit more of a precarious position as he tries to get some speed back.
I think Ryan was maybe expecting a little bit more camaraderie there with the 62 with Keegan Leahy. Of course, the two of them, teammates last season, and dominated a huge chunk of that championship. And I think Ryan was expecting Keegan to hop up top, but Keegan said, yeah, this bottom groove is pretty comfortable. But look at the names. We got ourselves slowly working to the front. A couple of past season champions. Michael Conti has worked himself up into the top 10 from his 14th starting spot. And Ray Alfala has come from 32nd on the grid up to 12th, and he is pushing a couple of cars, including that number 20 Joe Gibbs machine of Jake Nichols that we've talked about a couple of times. The head of this field, you see the 88 of Brad Davies, another familiar name in this championship as well, pushing his teammate of Michael Conti. So those cars, maybe not the greatest starting spots this week, but they are doing a fantastic job pushing their way to the front.
And now 3 wide as Chris Shearburn finds himself with that advancing partner. He is able to kind of force his way back down and in front of Nichols. He is not going to drop all the way to the back, but that's how quickly it can happen. So we've seen a couple of those scenarios where a driver either wants to get back down to the inside line or jump up to the outside where there hasn't necessarily been space, and the drivers, for the most part, cutting each other a break so far. I think that's certainly the right idea when you're talking about being 23 laps in to a 100-lap contest. That's not going to be the same story when we get 100 laps in. And right there, down the back straightaway, almost contact with a couple of cars as the 20 and the 8 split off a good bit. The 88 and the 21 actually were the ones that got together. That was Davies and Alfala. Nothing comes from it. It was down the back straightaway, but another close call.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that we're going to be seeing all night, especially in the mid-pack. People potentially having some issues here as far as those sort of those close calls get. When it comes to the plate tracks, you don't really get any closer calls anywhere else on the entire schedule. So, but you are right, talking about that give and take. A lot of these drivers' patience really going to have to be a big factor as we see another big head of steam coming from that upper groove, and Ryan Luza in his flip side car going to get pushed nearly out to the front of the field. He's not going to quite clear that 17 of Michael Guest, but he will be nose to nose as they roll through 3 and 4. Expect him to lose a couple of car lengths here, but his friend pushing him, Chris Shearburn, falls a little bit off the back of his rear bumper, and that's not going to help him to look for a big shove here coming in towards the tri-oval with a 53 get the lead at the line.
He comes with a big head of steam. It is going to be the 17 of Gas still at the start-finish line, but Ryan Luza, second overall pick in the draft, out of that Flipside Tactics camp. Of course, your runner-up last season and a champion the year before that has quite literally never finished any worse than second in his so far 2-year career in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series, and maybe one of the more aggressive drivers thus far. Definitely an instigator. He wants to get up there and race for these laps led. Doesn't want to sit around and maintain. I guess he feels like you're close enough to the front, you should be able to do something with it, and he has the support there. Shearburn in line, Nichols in line, Alfala, who you mentioned, one of the biggest movers of the night from 32nd to 7th, is that 4th car in line on the outside. Also, I'm going to call it Eric J. Smith there, 33rd to 7th. His 51 Chevy is on the inside there, 4th in line on the bottom. So a handful of drivers, and it did help that these drivers stayed out under that first caution flag, and we saw about half the field come in, but they've certainly done their job at making him a lot of track position early on.
Definitely have, and you can tell now that they're up here, even after staying out, they're keeping pace with the likes of those cars that were already running at the front of the field, most notably Bobby Zielinski, Keegan Leahy, those guys that were at the head of the field the entire time, some of which has sort of run their way through, have done a good job of keeping their way up here as Michael Guest is going to lead another lap and sort of checking in on a couple of our drivers that we know came down pit road. A couple of them, I think, struggling a little bit, getting their way back through this field. I think Overland especially is one of those drivers not doing a great job automatically getting his way back toward the front of this field. Of course, was leading at one point, currently sits 30th on the racetrack.
Definitely not good as he tries to work his way back up and is kind of flip-flopped because his teammate Alfala started way at the back. He started on pole, and they find themselves on opposite ends of the field, but flipped from how all of this started. Working lap number 27. This portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by PEAK Antifreeze, official antifreeze of the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. The battle up front continues. Of course, this lead pack that we follow is 30 cars deep, all the way from Guest up front to Chris Overland, who was scored in 30th position the last time by. We then have to have a couple of packs of cars that are breaking off, so like an Ashton Crowder and Nathan Lyon, 34th, 35th position, 5 seconds off the group. But all 39 cars who started this race still in it as we approach 1/3 of the way through.
Yeah, and as we start actually looking up back towards the front of the field, to see one car actually drop off that outside line, that was the 36. So Shearburn going away, which means it's just Alfala and Nichols to push Ryan Luza in that 53. You still see a little bit of a couple other cars, though, a little bit back on that upper line. Zach Novak, Malik Ray, Taylor Hurst, and Jimmy Mullis are trying to push that way up to the outside groove where the defending series champions are currently sitting. Of course, Ray, the current defending champion, and Luza winning the season previous, but still a little bit off the back is that number 6 Oscar Mayer car from quite getting there.
And he's certainly been in the mix. I think Zach Novak's doing exactly what he needs to do, just kind of holding his own. Started 9th, was scored in 11th the last time by. You've got the likes of Malik Ray, somebody else who's made it an impressive maneuver towards the front thus far. Started 28th, he runs in 13th. So it does go to show you that qualifying does help at Daytona. At the end of the day, it comes down to racecraft, how you can navigate this in under green flag conditions while also at the same time being able to make the right strategy calls. Because say we go green for the next, the next time by, 7 laps from now, there is going to be a disparaging point between drivers who have to pit when and who can stay out a little bit longer. You never know. So all of these are calculated risks. If you're new to this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, these drivers have a lot of people in the service with them, in the sim with them right now. They've got spotters talking to them. They've got a crew chief, oftentimes split between a couple of cars on the radio at all times. All of this is being strategized with and for them. So all of these drivers certainly not out there on their own.
That's one of the big things that I think always surprises people is actually we might see Luza get the lead right here at the line. That's actually important. He gets it, so he's going to lead his first lap this season by 0.14 of a second. And he's actually going to go to the lead as he gets clear of the 17 of Michael Guest. And that's important because now that shows that you can get a push off turn 4 and you can potentially win this race on the lead on the last lap by just a nose. But on that point, Evan, that you were making, you're absolutely right. I know Dale Jr. has talked about it on his podcast in the past, and some people have been surprised that these guys, even though they're just playing a video game, that they have the likes of crew chiefs and spotters and people really working for them. Now that I think you have $112,000 potentially up for grabs, I think a lot of people really get it. But this is, if you've never watched this before, this is serious racing. This is about as serious as you're going to see on Sunday for the Real World Daytona 500. There's a lot of work, hours of testing, hours of practice, hours of fuel economy testing, of getting out there and pushing a teammate, having a group of drivers push you around this place, seeing what the cars do, how the tents behave. There is a lot that goes into running in this series and running in it well.
A lot of names that you don't even hear about for the teams behind the scenes as dev drivers. They get a ton of analytics out of those guys. And, the battle at the end of the day here tonight worth $1,000 to the race winner. But, of course, the war is what hands out over $112,000, including 40 of which goes to the 2019 Series champion. Of course, to follow along with this race, go to RaceSpot.tv/timing. Follow along as these drivers continue to work now around this Daytona International Speedway. For the drivers who have yet to come down to pit road, though, starting to get close to that limit on fuel from what they had on board since the start of this race.
That's going to be really the first interesting point, Evan, because like you said, when we had that caution, we saw nearly a 50-50 split of drivers who opted to come down pit road on roughly lap 10 and those who didn't. So you're going to see about half the field cut down pit road here, probably the next 10 laps or so, get themselves some tires and fuel and get back out on the racetrack. You might see some strategy calls for those drivers as well, because if you're coming down pit road under green flag conditions, Evan, you're probably not going to take 4 tires. You might only take 2, may just take lefts, may just take rights. Going to depend on how your car is sort of handling and what you think that driver prefers, but you're going to fill that tank up regardless and just take a couple of tires and get back out there. So when those drivers eventually start peeling off and coming down on towards pit road, it's going to be interesting on what they choose to do once they get there. I think that's why we're starting to see is we only have a couple of drivers now really up in that upper groove. Jake Nichols and Ray Alfala, the only ones that stayed up there. Why you're seeing all those cars drop down to that bottom line of the racetrack. They need to get down to pit road here shortly. They're just trying to get to that inside line to make the entrance as easy on themselves as possible.
And we've been green for long enough after the early caution flag that came at lap number 9 that it's not as simple as saying, well, all the cars up front are the guys that stayed out. They need to pit. The cars at the back pitted, and they don't need to. We've gotten a good amount of, I think, a movement throughout the pack since then that it can be very chaotic coming down to the pit lane. It's almost everybody now down in a single file line on the bottom of the racetrack, aside from the number 20 of Jake Nichols being pushed by the number 21 of Ray Alfala. Almost everybody else hugging that double yellow line down the back straightaway into turn 3, keeping an ear on the radio, of course, and eyes on the mat in the sim. Seeing as drivers continue to get a little bit more noisy about what their decisions are going to be this time. But in turn 4, no takers quite yet. But certainly you got to expect that point not all that far away on the horizon.
Definitely isn't. I actually don't hate this call by the 21 and the 20 by not being super aggressive trying to get to that bottom line of it, because honestly, if they're smart, they should know that pretty much all the cars around them and in front of them are going to have to peel off into pit road shortly regardless. So I don't think if you're Ray or if you're Jake, you necessarily have to just lean out of the throttle and wait until you find an open gap somewhere in the pack of cars behind you. I think you can afford to just sit right here, keep your foot in it, and then when these handful of cars come down on pit road here in the next handful of laps, you should be able to find an opening to get both you and that really the both of you down on towards pit road shortly. And once again, no one coming down on towards pit road.
Third car in line appears up on the outside. That is Eric Smith in the number 51. So he now tries to get up there and catch some of the wake off of Alfala and Nichols. So far unsuccessfully. He's got about 4 car lengths until he catches up to them, and he's going to have to work a pretty nasty side draft if he wants to get up into them. But it does show that not everybody content to just running in line as they sit right now. And certainly if you're the 20 and the 21 machine, well, everybody else kind of starts to settle in and wants to get into a comfortable position to safely get down to the pit lane. They see this as an advantage to get a little bit more aggressive as you go on board. And the left-hand side of your screen, it's Jake Nichols in the 20. The outside line's moving. He'll challenge for third this time by.
Yep, he's trying to do that. 21 of Ray Alfala doing a fantastic job pushing that 20 car, just the two of them. He's always been a good plate racer, has Ray. He's always really had good talents. There's been a couple of the past races here. He's not had the greatest luck in terms of getting the results he's wanted, but I think if I remember correctly, the similar situation last year for the driver of that 21 car, of course, wheeling the 2 at that point, that he started somewhere near the back and really got himself up towards the pointy end of the field at roughly around this point.
Certainly it's easy to forget some of the moves that happened earlier in the race and how that can dictate where you end up when it really gets down to it. But it looked like with everybody diving down low that it was going to be pit stops very quickly. And since then, it has kind of been a waiting game. And of course, drivers try to find drivers to come down with. At most racetracks, you're going to want to come down by yourself, get away from the group, maybe short pit, get some fresh tires. We'll certainly be talking about that, I think, as a strategy when we go racing at Las Vegas Motor Speedway in 2 weeks' time. Not here at Daytona. It's a catch-22. A, well, you need cars to come down pit road with, so when you get off of the pit lane, you're in a draft and you've got speed. But on the contrary, B, well, you come down pit road with 20 or so cars trying to slow down from 200 miles an hour. That normally work that well as you try to lose down to pit road speed of 60. So very treacherous times as these drivers wait to pull the trigger.
It really is. And of course, one of the other things to note is that we have a couple of sort of slower packs of cars. They're just rolling around, cars that have damage. You know, the most notably the likes of Blake Reynolds, Ryan Lowe, Michael Gruglia, and Corey Vincent. About 30 seconds back. It's going to be interesting to see these drivers that come down pit road. Can they get themselves off and be somewhere near that group of cars when they come back onto the racing surface? I'd wager the answer is probably going to be no, but if you can somehow figure out how to do that, being able to come off a pit road and potentially catch a group of cars like that would really be a huge advantage as far as the way this race is going to pan out, as we should be seeing cars hitting pit road in the next couple of laps. We're coming to lap number 41 right now, and let's see what happens. I see a couple cars thinking about it, but no, a couple drivers swerve towards the yellow line, but no one crosses it.
And the caution flag we saw earlier is going to fudge the numbers a little bit, but lap 40 there now as we take 41 is a good point to kind of break this down. If you can go 40 laps on a fuel run, and again, you did save a little bit under those 3-4 laps we had under the yellow, but say you go 40 laps and it is a 2-stop race to the end. Well, the drivers who came down pitted under that first yellow pitted 10 laps in. You can go 40 from there, you get to 50, you do another 40, you get to 90. That's still not enough to cut a pit stop out of this. So that's certainly an interesting thing. Could you push to 45? If you can, then maybe the drivers who took that short pit early on that first yellow, the strategy makes a little bit more sense. But right there, down to pit road, here comes Michael Conti. His teammate Brad Davies is also in with him.
So those are the two notable ones. You also have a couple others. Nick Ottinger on pit road, Brian Schoenberg, Malik Ray, and Matt Busa. A small group of cars coming down pit road initially, and let's see what happens now that we have some drivers who make that call. Will we see a bigger flood of drivers hit down towards that lower groove? I see one car blow the double yellow on the back straightaway. That's Keegan Leahy. And what I was talking about in terms of potentially finding a bottom line and a spot to fill into, Ray Alfala has gotten himself down there to that bottom groove. Still two drivers who have yet to, Jake Nichols, as well as another driver up there in the middle, the 80 of Brandon Cattell.
And it looked like a very coordinated pit stop. As you see now your race leaders come in. Here comes from the race lead, Ryan Luza down pit road, and contact as he tried to get into the stall. He got into the 17 there. I don't think either of those drivers are going to get a speeding penalty, but Michael Guest took a shot there on the left front.
That's going to be something you worry about. It doesn't take a hard hit to slow down these cars here, and they took those hits in the part of the cars you don't want to. For those who are unaware, for the most part, the cars tend to be strong if you can sort of line them up and hit nose to tail. But the moment you start sort of banging quarter panels and potentially smashing tires together, it doesn't take a hard hit to hit suspension components and damage them. Here comes our leaders, though, around turns 3 and 4. We should see everyone peel off on a pit road right now, but no, there's still actually strategy calls getting made, getting good fuel economy are the likes of Ray Alfala, Jake Nichols, Brandon Cattell, Zach Novak, all these cars that have yet to pit, and of course some of which would have pit under that first yellow.
And you saw the lead group of cars there, those fast cars you're looking at on the right-hand side of your screen, kind of swallow up and pass another group. That other group was the first group of cars that came down to pit. So that had Michael Conti, Nick Ottinger, Brad Davies, Dylan Duvall, Phil Diaz, Casey Kerwin, and some other drivers mixed in there as well, as it's all kind of blended together now. That was a very coordinated and orchestrated pit stop because almost all of those cars at the time took left side tires only, filled it up with fuel and left. It was very in sync with one another. As you see now, another group of cars down to the pit lane. Duvall's group, who had kind of mixed in with the Conti gang, they're down onto the pit lane now. So almost now, the majority, I think, if not all of the cars that had to pit have come down to the pit lane. And now Ray Alfala finds himself leading this race. The push to Jake Nichols and Brandon Cattell tucked in line third as you watch them come out of turn 2.
Apparently had Dylan Duvall have a bit of an incident as well, get onto the grass, entering pit road, but otherwise he's in his stall, and I think okay. As what are people going to do as Ray goes to the apron to make a move, and what a save from Ray Alfala. We saw him pull off a fantastic save to hold on to that car at Homestead to win the championship, and in the season opener here, what a pass dealing with the lat traffic from Ray Alfala. I don't know how he held on to that thing in the 21, but my, that was a sketchy move from Ray.
That was Cody Bias in the racetrack there, and I think it was kind of high. He should have gone low. You see him low now, letting the field go, but it was a little bit of a late maneuver there. Ray Alfala had to dive to avoid him, and again, you are not allowed to pass below the double yellow, but it certainly would appear that that would be good enough to say that Alfala has avoided an incident there as he tried to figure out where the 24 was going. And for Bias, you want to hold the bottom because you kind of want to get ingested by the field. You go high, you're never catching it them, you make them go around you got a better chance of hanging on to that draft, but certainly gets the heart rate going of our defending series champion as Ray Alfalla had to make quite a maneuver to get around him, and now it's just a complete mess with what cars are on the lead lap and what cars are not, as once again we start to see all those small factions grow and kind of form one giant pack once more.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really a bit of a cluster at the moment, because you have about half the field who's a lap down, and everyone else who's out there cruising on the lead lap who's yet to come down and actually pit. So a little bit confusing for now on the live timing, and this would be a disaster of a time for a caution. And of course, at this point, we were just casually going 3 wide with the likes of Michael Conti and a number of other cars as well, Kate Cook, Michael Guest.
Yeah, just no big deal as all of these drivers sort of find a way through, but you can see the 8 and the 47 there, those cars way up on the outside line. In the middle, the 36 and the 18. This is all mid-pack right now, just at the tail end of the top 10. And what this is allowing to do is the cars that are at least agreed with one another to go single file, stay down low on the bottom, they're kind of pulling away a little bit here. I'm not sure this is going to work out for Michael Conti, as now the JTG entry of the 47 car tucks in line back to the middle. That is lapped car Nick Ottinger working with the 8 machine of Michael Conti in all of this pack. Again, those are cars that have pitted. So top 20 are on the lead lap. 21st all the way through 39th are a lap down. Those are the cars that have pitted. So a majority of the cars you're looking at in this lead pack are actually lap down cars.
As we look right now, bit of an interesting view. Right-hand side of your screen, you have Ray Alfalla on board. This is that incident that we were talking about with that slow car and the save he made on the apron. On the left-hand side, live pictures looking back at the 20 of Jake Nichols. They actually get ready to head up in towards turn 3. And you see that car slow it out in front of him. He's unsure of where to go. Ends up deciding low is going to be the place to be, and he ends up really just about guessing right after making a fantastic save.
The 53 machine now ends up being the lead car outside line, but again, in the grand scheme of things, not all that critical of a battle for position, because it is actually a 28th place spot that is currently occupied by Luza. So certainly this goes to show you how big of a difference that early and maybe at the time inconsequential decision may have seemed, is it's entirely changed the pace of this race. If you're trying to keep track of who's where, top of your screen you see the intervals, and Zelensky, Duval, Bias, Schoenberg showing you that all of those drivers are actually running at the moment a lap down, and in fact the next time by we're going to be halfway home.
Yeah, this is really ticked off quickly, isn't it? We're only 42 minutes into this thing, and it's going to be cross flags as they come by the iRacing starter stand. So, but now we're also sort of at that point, Evan. We saw people go 43, 44 laps if you didn't come down pit road. If you did, your pit window's coming up somewhere around 54, 55 is going to be the same sequence for all these guys that did pit at that first cycle. And I think notably, if you came down on that first stop, I'm pretty sure if you can stretch and get good a fuel economy, you can pretty much get from this coming pit stop and get to the end of the race.
Yeah, that's the question. If you can get those 45 laps, you'll be good, because you would have pitted 10 laps in. 45 would get you to about lap 55, and that same distance would get you to the end. So certainly I think 40 or 55, 56 is the number, but no, here they come. Ray Alfalla going to lead a big charge as he smokes the tires. 4 wide behind him into pit road. Nichols gets hit by the 74, hangs on as everybody dives down at halfway.
Nichols actually missed his box a little bit, so Ray's help that entire run through the field, gets a little bit of damage and gets held up in the pit stall. Let's see if he maybe goes for a bit of a short fill just to deal with this. It's pretty much half your field. We saw with the first cycle, Evan, drivers come down in little bunches. We just saw half the field hit pit road at once.
Gattel struggling. He just now gets into his pit stall. So a horrible entry for the 80 machine. As you see the order off the pit lane, this is everybody else coming out to pit road. And what we talked about, trying to make it to the end, I was just about to say your magic number's got to be 55, 56. Pit stops at lap 51, Randy. I don't know. 49 laps would be an awfully long way to go. If you can't make that, that means that
we got a car around exiting pit road. We got a car in the grass in 1 and 2. Who is that actually? Has been from Nicholas Shelton in the number 79. I think that was him, and indeed it was, just trying to power his way up on the apron. And spun down into the grass, didn't bring out a caution, of course. And you see the field go by this entire group that just came off of pit road. All these faster cars getting single file and making it 3 wide with these guys peeling off of pit road.
The 27 almost did the same thing on that flat apron. You saw the second look at Shelton, got a little bit out of shape, was able to hang on to it, and now the battle up at the front of the field sees Zach Novak fall from the race lead to 17th through that exchange, and the first group of cars now that came down to the pit lane on this cycle, the cars that did not pit earlier, and now once again gone to the race lead in this one with Keegan Leahy leading a charge atop with Michael Guest and Kane Cook. So a lot going on in the last lap or two. Perfect time is in it to take a look top to bottom at our iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally organized racing from NASCAR and many more. At lap number 53, Keegan Leahy is your race leader. He leads atop the number 17 to Michael Guest, who scored in second spot. Kane Cook right now running in third with Casey Kerwin and Garrett Lowe in fourth and fifth. Again, all these cars single file down and up at the front of the field. The RLT runs right now P6. It is Michael Conti scored in 7th position. Nick Ottinger runs in 8th. Brad Davies is 9th, and Eric Smith rounds out your top 10.
Mid-pack right now looks like Chris Shearburn in the 11th spot. Ray Alfala in the 21 is in 12th, and actually he has a bit of damage and has fallen down the field, so maybe drama happening to Ray Alfala. Bobby Zelensky 13th with Ryan Luza, Dylan Duvall, Cody Bias, Taylor Hurst, Jake Nichols, Zach Novak, and Christian Challoner rounding out your top 20.
Jimmy Mullis has scored in 21st spot. This is kind of the back of this lead group with Phil Diaz 22nd. Then it's Chris Overland 7 seconds off of the leaders, 23rd, with Timmy Hill in 24th. 14 seconds back, a 3-car pack that is Schoenberg. Ray Busa scored 25, 26, and 27. You've also got Nicholas Shelton 28th, Benjamin Nelson 29th, and Casey Tucker rounds out your top 30.
In your last handful of cars running here tonight in the 31st spot, you currently have, of course, Nicholas Shelton. Then you get Brandon Cattell, Nathan Lyon, Ashton Crowder, Blake Reynolds, Ryan Lowe, Adam Benefiel, Michael Garuglia, and Corey Vincent. All cars currently scored on the lead lap.
And that's going to be a complete look top to bottom at your iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, you can visit iRacing.com to sign up today. And if you use the promo code PR-eNASCAR 2019, you can get a 3-month iRacing membership for just $12. Again, that promo code valid on new memberships only. It is PR-eNASCAR 2019. And you can get yourself signed up today. So through all of the mid-race chaos, all of a sudden we find ourselves with a brief pause of the action as everybody runs single file, and would like to take this opportunity to say hello to another special guest we have with us in the RaceSpotTV booth this evening, the competition director of this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, Mr. Usain Hamilton. Thank you for joining us, and hope you're enjoying the action so far.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been some exciting racing to this point, just past the halfway point. You saw a lot of strategy come into play there in that first half of the race. It's been interesting to watch it all play out.
Certainly had a chance to chat with you towards the latter end of last season with the eNASCAR Ignite Series, and happy to be working with you full-time here in 2019. As you mentioned, you were assigned as the competition director from the NASCAR staff to work side by side with iRacing's Tyler Hudson, who's the managing director of this series. Just tell us how that came about and what it means for the growth of the series as well as the competition role.
Well, there's a lot of growth and excitement around the eNASCAR platforms, both the PEAK Series and the Ignite Series. Very important focuses for us moving forward. Working with Tyler, it's more about bringing together the competition arm of what we're doing on the National Series side and tying that back to what we're trying to accomplish with the PEAK Series here. So it's just syncing up on rules. I'll be working with him in appeals in that type of area and making sure that we're doing what we need to do to collaborate and keep the series growing, for one. But also give the competitors, I guess, the same type of tools that we have on the NASCAR side with the National Series. So direct tie into our competition arm, communication-wise, whatever Tyler needs there, we're here to assist, and vice versa.
And obviously, in addition to your roles here with this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze Series and the Ignite Series, you've still got your day-to-day role with the NASCAR. Just tell us a little bit about that and how that experience will help you over here.
Absolutely. So it's a direct tie-in. So just this past weekend, I was race director for the Clash at Daytona. So all my experience as a race director, working racing operations, procedurally, those are the areas where we can help and help continue to grow the series. The drivers, with all that's on the line, all the new elements that we have built into the PEAK series this year, they're professional drivers, professional esports drivers, and not only are they developing within this series here, but hopefully there'll be some drivers that we'll see race in the future on a larger stage, just like you see with William Byron, who's sitting on the pole for the Daytona 500. So my experience there is exactly what I'm hoping to bring to the table and help Tyler tie the two together.
I know it's been an eventful offseason with the increased purse now of $112,000. Of course, we see a bunch of NASCAR and esports teams represented on track. So we certainly look forward to 2019, but as well, everything else this series has to offer. We'll let you get out of here. We greatly appreciate your time, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Definitely. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to seeing how this one plays out.
Again, big thanks to Usain Hamilton, the competition director here at the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, giving us a little bit of insight as we kick off 2019 here so far. And since that early yellow, lap number 9, clean and green with strategy aplenty, as we've been able to kind of rack our heads around the current picture that has a 19-car lead pack, pretty much entirely single file, all the way back to Zach Novak, the 6th car, the only one that really wants to try something on the back there, and he's got some help with Mullis and Hurst, it looks like.
Yeah, a little bit of help from back there, but overall not much in terms of trying to push forward. He's only got one car, it seems like, even trying to help him whatsoever. I will say, though, Evan, talking about strategy, two elements to this. The first one, of course, that first group that has to come down pit road that we're expecting somewhere around lap 82, 83. We know that they're going to have to take a little bit more fuel than that group that they come down later. However, we saw with that first sequence of pit stops that we just had that first group of cars that comes down pit road has a slight advantage because they get out there on the racetrack and they get up to speed, and those cars that are then coming off of pit road about 10 to 15 laps later are easy picking for those cars that are already wound up to 208, 209 miles an hour, as those cars coming off of pit road get themselves pulled back up from about 180, 190. We saw that here, and this is how Keegan Leahy pretty much slungshot his way to the lead. That might play into this coming off these final stops. That'll be setting this up for pretty much a 10-lap run. It'll be really nice if you can come down first, lead that group, and potentially pick up that race lead with 10 laps to go, as we get some maybe strategy calls as well getting called here. The 62 of Keegan Leahy actually goes down to that bottom groove, and no one comes with him. All the race leaders putting him in the rearview mirror.
Here, just going to have a complete mutiny to the outside of the racetrack as he tried to work with him. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 cars going on by race leader 5 now, as his teammate Jarl Tien goes on through. But Michael Gass, second time tonight, he's made the outside lot work. And at number 17, Facet all forward to the race lead, pushed by Kane Cook. Casey Kerwin in line as well, and Garrett Lowe now maybe with the race high as he ends up 4th at the line.
And I don't know, honestly, who should feel a little bit more offended here, if it's Keegan Leahy or if it's maybe Michael Connie, because what Michael had happen to him, as well as the cars behind him of Nick Ottinger and Brad Davies, as all those cars aggressively cut down and tried to get away from Keegan and eventually filled that bottom groove. Michael went from having a train of cars in front of him to absolutely no help and just a couple of cars, behind him. So that group, they get somewhat stalled out trying to push their way forward because all of their help just disappeared.
As they head into the shade here now, as the sun is tucked behind some clouds. This portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Blue Def Diesel Exhaust Fluid, certified pure #1 diesel exhaust fluid. As now it is 35 laps to go in this race, so if you did have to pit one more time, you could make it to the end. There is a group of cars that we expect to have to come down one more time. The other question is, though, is that group that pitted 10 laps in and pitted at about lap 51, 52, can they possibly make it to lap 100? I think that you could say a yellow would certainly help, although if you get a yellow, I think you just come in and top off, depending on where that margin certainly is. And another thing to keep in mind as we look at our big pack is some of the cars actually at the tail end of this lead pack really struggling, losing the draft to Taylor Hurst in 19th. Array Alfala, who's actually now ended up in 20th position, 16 seconds off for the race leaders in that secondary group there through the pit stops. Some drivers not able to hang with this lead group.
Yeah, of course, one of the drivers in that sort of second pack that's buried now 16 seconds back, Ray Alfala, he's got some damage on that car while we were doing our midway race break. He got loose through 1 and 2 and ended up finding the outside wall, and the bad luck for Alfala continues here at Daytona. But I think the car that's most notable back here is that pole sitter of Chris Overland. We saw him actually have good speed through the first handful of laps, Evan, and obviously that car was fast. He put it on pole position, but after that first round of pit stops, when we saw the split strategy come out and he ended up making the call to come down on towards pit road, we've just not seen the performance from that Wood Brothers car all night. Just been buried in the mid-pack pretty much since the get-go. Maybe a little bit of fuel economy coming from some of these cars, because a lot of these cars look healthy. It's either issues on pit road or people really trying to stretch fuel here 16 seconds back.
And when you into a long, strung-out green flag race like this, and all of a sudden you blink and you're on the wrong end of the strategy in all of this, then you don't really have many options. It's you can hope on a yellow, and the stats will say it's Daytona. You certainly get some. We've gotten one. I'd be surprised if that is the only one we see this evening. But again, there really is no way to definitively say either way how this race is going to play out. That intensity, though, that we've seen back in the pack, those cars too wide often. We've been taking a look back at them. It hasn't been replicated in the lead group. It seems like the cars up front much more on the same page with one another and content with riding single file. Well, that's starting to go away with Zach Novak in that number 6 Ford, continuing the spearheaded outside charge that has just now cracked the top 10. And now those cars towards the top 5 or so going to have to start taking note as they pass Luza, who has scored P10 at the line.
This is going to be sketchy, though, Evan, because these guys, not only do they have Luza about 20, 30 car lengths ahead of them, they have a big gap starting with Adam Benefield as the first car they'll get to and ending with Nathan Lyons. This is about 7, 8 cars strong, and this is going to be, I think, really scary for these guys. I thought they were going to sort of get them around the same time as Luza initially, so at least they don't have to deal with that, but this is going to be the biggest gaggle of lap traffic they've had to deal with in a while.
It is, and certainly you're going to have to try to safely navigate this group as well. Listen, that lead pack is not going to be able to just completely blow by these cars, and in fact, they're too wide as they get caught up to down the back straightaway here. And we talked about this point earlier with Bias when he had a close with Alfala. Those lap cars probably hold the inside line. You're going to force the faster, bigger group to go to your outside, and you almost get swallowed up by them. You blend and you merge into that group, and it helps you pick up speed and gives you a little bit of extra space compared to some of the other cars that you are fighting with. But it is 30th through 36th position, this pack that your leaders are about to catch. They're not way off the pace because it is a pack right now of 7 cars in line. But last time by somebody like a Cattell in that group ran a 44.061. The lead group running 43.8 or so. Michael Guest with a 43.865. So they are faster. They will catch them. The question is not if, but when.
I will say, though, Evan, I will say if you are a smart team, or if you're sort of buried in this pack and maybe want to try and risk something, you might want to come down pit road, especially if you have some teammates. Try to get 3 or 4 of you peel down pit road right here, because I guarantee you with this lap traffic, things are going to get mighty sketchy for your race leaders, and it is not out of the question that they tangle with this group of lap cars and bring out a caution. And if you come down pit road and a caution comes out, you will by default, by being able to just stay out, go to the head of the field for the coming restart inside of 30 laps to go at Daytona, and that is always a good situation to be in. So if you're at the tail end of this lead pack, seeing this sort of 2x2 group of lap cars in front, I'm definitely considering, if I have control of a couple of guys, bringing them down and peeling them off onto pit road.
And you need enough cars that you're going to have enough draft support getting to back at it onto the racetrack, while also not having too many. And there it is. Race leaders in. It's Michael Guest. It's Kane Cargo in the 17. Blows pit road. Race leader Michael Guest is in the grass.
He actually got somewhat fortunate here. He did the full 360. Not sure if he might have an unsafe pit entrance penalty here. If that's the case, it's a potential race ender. But the fact that he does a complete spin around means that he's only going to lose a couple of seconds. It's not going to be that big of an incident, as opposed to if he just stops, say, 90 degrees opposite direction of travel. So you see the cars he came down pit road with, they will get the release a little bit sooner, but he will be able to get back out there and at least won't completely lose the slipstream as 4 tires for those guys. As your race leaders have caught that lap group, let's see if any more of them decide to come down pit road. Answer's going to be no.
And Guest is definitely sitting on a pit road with a penalty. It could be a speeding entry. It could be an unsafe pit entry because he ended up in the grass. It could be both. But he took his 4 tires and fuel, and unfortunately that Fastenal entry is sitting in the box serving a penalty. So barring a quick yellow and an opportunity to get back into this, Michael Guest from the race lead may have just thrown away an opportunity and a $1,000 race winning prize. So your new race leaders go down the back straightaway. It is Keegan Leahy in the 62. Teammate Jarl Tien. The G2 Esports entries have hooked up, and they lead as of this time by Michael Conti there in the mix as well. The 47 and Nick Ottinger, the top 5. Oh, and the Junior Motorsports teammates, Conti Brad Davies in 5th as well.
That's actually what I was going to say, Evan, is that we talk about this sort of inter-team alliances. That you want to talk about a group of names from the NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series over the years. Michael Conti and Nick Ottinger, very talented group that has worked together for a long time. I would suspect that Nick and Michael are going to work together here, and of course Brad Davies will be involved in this mix as well. So you sort of have 2 teammates of Jarl and Keegan, and then you have a few others of Conti, Ottinger, and Davies leading the field. And because of how quickly they actually got through the lap traffic, they are quickly actually putting a number of cars from their lead group in the rearview mirror as they start catching up the likes of Adam Benefiel, Ashton Crowder, and Ryan Lowe.
The sun is starting to set at Daytona International Speedway. Next time by 25 laps to go in the Daytona 250. Keegan Leahy last time down pit road as your race leader. Lap 42. He's going to have to make another trip down to the pit lane before this race is over. So the interval you look back to would be to a Brian Schoenberg. Maybe first time tonight we mentioned the Williams Esports number 55 entry. He runs in 15th position right now. That puts him 21 seconds off of your race leaders. Last time the 55 car was down on pit road was earlier in this race as well, when the rest of those cars all came down to the pit lane at lap number 42. So a significant number of your leaders still have to come down pit road, so we are far from over.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any way anyone in that lead group is going to be able to come down on pit road, or excuse me, make it the rest of this race without coming down pit road once again. As I look at the lap chart, they were in, lap 42, lap 43. We didn't see anyone from that sort of second group of cars that had to come down pit road really stretch it. We literally watched the entire group peel off of pit road at once. I'm really surprised, actually, that no one decided or no one thought to really push the fuel as long as they could to see if they could maybe catch a yellow and open up a window to where they wouldn't have to come down pit road again. But that's the choice they ended up making as we're inside of 25 to go. Keegan Leahy with his teammates behind him and get to that group of lap cars. A little bit surprised, actually, that none of those cars ended up peeling down pit road as well. Watching behind, I would have thought that at least a couple of them would have.
You'd think drivers would certainly start to drip down to the pit lane, but the concern now is kind of knowing that everybody else out there with you is going to have to make one more pit stop to the end. Is you don't want to pit too early. We just saw nearly a caution to flag come out with a lot of contact we've seen on the pit road entry so far. You come in and pit earlier than you need to. You think, all right, I'll separate myself from the pack, I'll be fine. But then you get a caution to flag. If you're a lap down to cars who have already completed all their service, you are stuck. So that's why some other drivers, they want to try to ride this out as long as they can. A yellow before you pit allows you to come down, not really give up a ton of track position, and all of a sudden put you in a great spot. So that's the waiting game. There's no way to really accurately predict how that's going to happen. You got to go by your gut. You got to play the numbers, and that's where those crew chiefs and spotters play a role that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's one of the big things to really keep in mind of is actually one of the important tidbits of this as well is that first group that we just saw come down pit road that we saw the 17 peel off and end up having a spin. One car actually gets shuffled up to the upper line here. It's going to be Garrett Lowe from 28th. I believe he's one of the drivers I'm referencing. Those guys are at the head of this field of lap cars. Those people that came down with the 17 of Michael Guest. We saw him make this mistake. They are at the head of this same pack. So it's basically a one-lap differential from those guys back to your race leader. It's pretty much exactly a lap as the group mixes up as we approach 20 to go.
So the 28 machine tucks in line, and we continue to wait for the final bit of service tonight from Daytona International Speedway. Take a small second to step aside. When we come back, the race to the end. Keegan Leahy's your race leader at lap number 79.
My favorite piece of Daytona history is probably my trophy sitting back there on the wall.
And back live from Daytona International Speedway, this portion of the broadcast brought to you by Herculiner Truck Bed Liner. The tough comes easy. Lap number 80 in the works of this 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series opener. And we are awaiting the final ball to drop in a strategy-filled plate race. Not normally a sentence that you hear, and there you go. Cars diving to pit road at a turn number 4. Looks like Ottinger is in with the 88, and the 8 awfully tight as Conti Davies enjoying them.
Well, it might be 2019, but it looks like a 2018 Daytona pit stop with Conti, Ottinger, and Davies coming on towards pit road. Definitely a group that's been in this series for a long time. Of course, Davies been running in it since as far back as 2010, even when his team owner, Mr. Dale Jr., was running in this championship. But jet fuel only, it looks like, for those guys, and they're going to be off and away here for the last handful of laps of this one, and the 47 peels off as well. The 3 cars going to peel themselves out and hopefully keep as much of a gap as they can. And now that group is going to be praying for a caution so the cars in front have to peel down on towards pit road. They can make a free spot. Handful of other cars as well I see peeling on pit road behind your leaders.
And Novak comes down to the pit lane. Mullis is also in, so 2 more drivers come down to pit road. And it looks like that lead group of 4 that had came in with fuel only. We saw drivers taking left side tires on some of the earlier pit stops. Well, nobody taking the tires, at least in that first group that came down with both of those junior motorsports cars just moments ago. So now all of a sudden the ball is in the court of Leahy, who, as your race leader, is actually in the middle of a pack. In front of him, that's the 14 Casey Kerwin. That's the 28th placed car. More cars now diving down pit road. Benefield's in, Nelson down and in, and Leahy and Tien. So both the G2 Esports entries give up the top 2 spots.
Oh, we got a car in the grass.
Final time.
You got Chris Shearburn in the grass. What happened on his pit entry? Did the 18 of Zelensky get into him as they got down to the commitment cone? And that's exactly what happened. Bobby locks up one of the rear tires. I believe the right rear just gets that car a little bit loose, and he catches the rear quarter panel, the 36 of Chris Shearburn. We stay green, but the drama on pit road that has really, I think, defined this race 7 continues as your leaders come off and they go to recycle out onto the racetrack.
Absolutely, the 4th piece of contact at least that we have seen on a pit road entry. You see on the left-hand side of your screen on board with Jarl Tien as that group all blends back out onto the track. One car that you don't notice on the apron until now is Chris Shearburn. That contact, all but take himself out of this race as well. So a handful of drivers, and now issues with Benefield. So another car with a spin trying to get through pit service. This time it's the 83 machine. He lost it coming out of pit road on the flat of the apron. He's slowed down there, getting back up to speed. That takes him out now of the group with a lot of cars, and he'll be all on his own. Here's going to be a second look at it on the inside as he ended up in grass.
What madness this has panned out and worked out as, and is the way things have cycled through. Ray Alfalo with the destroyed right front fender on that number 21 Wood Brothers Motorcraft Fusion leads the way over Timmy Hill in 2nd, Chris Overland in 3rd, Jake Nichols P4, and Phil Diaz rounds out the top 5. I think of those top 5 that currently sit there, Evan, we know all these guys at least owe us a pit stop, but I think 3 of them we haven't talked about all day outside of the starting the grid and our midway race break.
That's definitely the way that these plate races can tend to work. It hasn't been one of those crash-filled season openers, and those are definitely the races where maybe not being mentioned and minding your own business, staying out of the headlines is a good one. But this one, strategy-filled. Depending on where you end up in this race and who goes to victory lane or not is going to be looked back on that early decision to either come or to not come down pit road just 9 laps into this race. A move that at the time certainly seemed peculiar, but wasn't guaranteed be a race-deciding decision. Now, though, with 15 laps to go this time by, is this stage set? The 21 Ray Alfala is leading this race right now in the number 21 machine, and we questioned with Timmy Hill tucked in line behind him, can they go the distance with the fuel that they have on board? Last time Alfala was down on the pit road, again, it was a little bit earlier than what we were expecting. It was at lap 52. 48 laps is an awfully long way to go.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any way this entire group, and I'm just going to check to see when they came down pit road, all of them hit the pits on the same lap. So none of them, you know, there's not like there's one of these cars here like Phil Diaz potentially who had gone an extra lap somehow and potentially made something happen. So if these guys can stretch an extra 3 laps, I'd be amazed, but I don't think it's going to happen, especially looking at Ray Alfala, Evan, who's currently leading this group. We know he has that aero damage, and aero damage sort of has a double effect. Not only will it slow down your top speed, but it will increase your fuel consumption as well, because, of course, the car isn't pushing through the air as easily as it was before. It's going slower with as much power. That's going to consume more gas at the same time. In some ways, if you're Ray, you almost need to sort of jut out and try to just catch the back of this train or somehow get into the middle. Having this 21 car leading this pack is actually probably the worst thing for this entire group of drivers.
You're not able to save anything when you're leading that pack, and it is only a 5-car pack. If they were fortunate enough to have been able to end up like Leahy was before he pitted in a group and leading the race, but being like 7th or 8th in line with lapped cars, then you'd be able to lift out of the throttle a little bit, try to save. Right now, you're talking about a heavy task to make if they are going to somehow pull this out, and even if they know they're not going to be able to make it, there is no advantage to pitting now, really, with 12 laps to go if you're going to run out of fuel with 4 to go. They're going to push this thing all the way, hope that maybe they get lucky and catch a yellow, but certainly they're not going to show their hand until it is absolutely time. But if those top 5, like you would think, cannot make it on fuel to the end, then you would have to turn your eyes back to Zach Novak in the 6. He leads the next pack in line. That car, the number 6 machine with the 46 and the 62, all in line behind Tim. Most recently down and onto the pit lane at lap number 82. They certainly can go the distance.
Yeah, they certainly can, of course, just coming off of pit road. As we get to the finish here, Evan, 2 things I want to bring up. The first thing, just a bit of a cool thing. The first time the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series, as we fade into darkness, the lights have switched on around the racetrack, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. Slightly more important, though, for those who have never tuned in, there is no overtime format to this championship. If we get to 5 laps to go in this race and a caution flies, that will end it, and whoever leads at that time will win this race. So that's one of the things to watch in terms of strategy, Evan. Some of these drivers, they may know they have no hope of winning here. So if you're Ray Alfala, Timmy Hill, Chris Overland, Jake Nichols, Phil Diaz, you may just push this fuel as far as you can go and hope you can catch a late race caution that ends it for you while you're the one scored leading this race.
The point to no return, as we like to refer to it as, and just because maybe a yellow comes out, 4 laps to go in this race, and we are not going to add to our 100-lap total counter in this race, so if it doesn't have a chance to restart, it won't. Doesn't mean that you lock it up. You still have to have enough fuel to pace all the way to the end. So, you know, the guys up front certainly wouldn't mind, I think, a yellow flag if they are not going to have enough fuel to get to the end, but you'd still have to be able to pace all the way through lap number 100. It is still Alfala, Hill, Overland, Nichols, and Diaz. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here they come down pit road. It's not going to be enough. They have to come in. It is certainly going to be a splash and go, but it is going to really hurt their stops and, of course, their total race time as they come down, I assume, for fuel only. And this will hand off the race lead now to Zach Novak with 10 laps to go.
I heard that they were looking for a driver for the Oscar Mayer mobile, and they may have to hand it off to Zach Novak if he can win this thing, wheeling that number 6 car, and he has behind him, pushing him, Jimmy Mullis. We know that those two have worked together in the past, and Michael Guest in the group as well. He's 3rd in line, but currently runs 38th, and actually, somewhat importantly here, Evan, because of these lap cars that are in this group, it's a little bit confusing if you look at it right now. That 17, that's 3rd in line, and the 77, 4th in line are laps down. The 3rd place running car is Ryan Michael Luza, who is actually 3rd in line, and you have another lap car behind him. So it's going to be really interesting watching this pan out, because you have race leaders mixed in with lap cars, and how those few lap cars amongst the race leaders are really going to shake things out here.
Yeah, Novak leads, lead lapper, so does Jimmy Mullis in 2nd. However, Michael Guest, the 17 car, lapped car. Ashton Crowder in the number 77, a lapped car. Then Luza, 5th in line, is 3rd on track in the 53. Lap car for Nelson. So it is a 50-50 split towards the front of the field. You have to wonder if any of those lap cars will help. Is slow on the inside. The 4's going to get put a lap down, as that was a close call there with Nathan Lyon down on the bottom of the racetrack, but they all get by him.
We have a group of lap cars peeling off of pit road as well. This could equally be important as potentially more lap cars get entered into the mix. We see Blake Reynolds coming off of pit road. I think they'll get by him pretty comfortably, though. So his lead pack rolls through 1 and 2, coming up towards that coveted 5 to go mark. When are these guys going to get aggressive? We saw the second line in the beginning stages of this race, Evan, be very relevant. You can push from that outside line, but we've not seen it in a while as this has turned into a strategy fest. Here comes G2.
They're trying to the outside, 3 wide with a lap car on the outside. It is not going to matter. The outside line going to be spearheaded by Jarl Tien in the 66, help to his teammate in Leahy. But here comes Luza, trapped behind lapped cars, needs to get closer to Novak and Bullis. Those top 2 have got a buffer, and the 77 won't let him get by. Now they do as Crowder goes back to the inside.
Crowder being playing a little bit of effect here. Maybe some teamwork happening, even though he's a lap down. But regardless, that flip side car is going to get the run outside that he needed. You also see Mullis try to cut off the line. He's not able to do so. 3 wide for the race lead, and Ryan Luz is going to take it into 3. Will he get clear, though?
He clears the inside, but not the bottom of the racetrack. So Novak holds, and as Jarl Tien went 3 wide, his teammate he contact. This 66 is into the outside wall. 5 wide they spread as they try to hang on. Cars are in the grass, and there they go. Big problems on the front of the caution at 5 laps to go.
6 laps to go. We're working lap number 95. We might be looking at a 2.5 mile sprint to win this thing.
It all started, it was that 66 of Tien. I was about to make the point. The 62, his teammate Leahy didn't go high with it, so he was on his own. He catches the outside wall, comes down. That is a big hit to Bobby Zelensky, who hangs on, uses the grass to come back up on track, and as he does, a couple of cars get together. I think the idiot Davies was trying to not get punted by the 18. He goes up and hits him. You'll see the replay here. 66 into the wall, comes down and trying to stay in the gas is Zelensky. Watch, he'll come back up. Davies also comes back up. They just run out of room, and they all squeeze into the tri-oval, and a 5-car wreck brings out a caution late in this Daytona 250.
And that's one of the big things, Evan. Maybe you talked about the practice drivers getting. Oftentimes, people will only sit 2 wide here in the sim at Daytona. There's not a lot of situations where drivers will find themselves into the 3rd line. It finally happened, and we see drivers make a mistake. So now everything gets shaken up in terms of what we were talking about in terms of the lap cars. We should be getting a restart here, at least 1 to go, possibly 2. We'll wait for confirmation with the lights on the iRacing safety car of when they will actually go out. But now those lap cars, they will be funneled to the back of the pack, if not waved around if they're ahead of Zach. And we will only have lead lap cars out here near the front of the field.
And the way that we tend to look at it is typically 4 laps to go or less would end this race. That yellow came out just as we took 6 laps to go, meaning that we probably caught the pace car right there, didn't need to do a lap around, so this may just be a 2-lap shootout to decide this thing with $1,750 on the line to your top 3 finishers. Zach Novak, I'm sure, would have absolutely no objection to this race going all the way to the end under caution to flag conditions, but I do not believe the 6 is going to be quite that fortunate, and I think we are set for an exciting and thrilling finish to this season opener as a wave by goes to the outside. Looks like the 77 going to get back to the lead lap as your lucky dog.
Yeah, Burton Kligerman Esports car of Ashton Crowder. He's going to be your wave around here, and he's actually going to be on the lead lap. And actually, let's run down that as we get ready for this quick restart. The drivers who have a realistic chance here: Novak, Luza, Mullis, Leahy, Ottinger. Your top 5 was Conti, Schallner, Davies, Zelensky, and Cook rounding out your top 10. Your top 26 will be on the lead lap. The 25th car of Ray Alfala on pit road right now getting repairs, and Ashton Crowder will take that 26th spot when he eventually gets up there to the head of the field. But over half your field potentially still in it to win this thing if something happens at Daytona, and something always happens at Daytona.
Well, there it is. We were talking about how it had been one caution, and the numbers will tell you you don't normally get away with that little, and especially that early. These races tend to have a late race wreck. Sometimes they come at 2-3 laps to go, but it ends it. But other times, and what looks like tonight may be another one, that this race may just have an opportunity to go back under green flag conditions. And of course, if we do, whether it be 2 laps, whether it be 1 lap, that is going to be your one and only opportunity to have a shot at racing for this thing, because again, with no overtime, this race will end at the completion of lap number 100, regardless of how we get to that point. If the lights go out this time by, it'll be a 2-lap shootout. If they don't, we hold our breath and see if it'll be a 1-lap shootout. So all eyes on the pace car as it paces into the tri-oval. We'll find out as lap number 97 comes to a close. Lights stay on. So possibility now remains at a 1-lap shootout, depending on what happens next.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're watching for. We're definitely not ending this race under caution, I think. I'm very confident that we're going to be seeing these lights going out. And in fact, we see the lap cars pulling down to the inside of the racetrack and fading to the back end of this field. So the likes of Michael Guest, Ryan Lowe, and others that have been on the short end of luck going to the tail end of the field, and they're going to be clearing way for these quicker drivers. So a 1-lap, 2.5-mile dash, Evan, guarantees as well that we will run this race out and finish it under green, because the way we do timing,
well, you got to get to the line first. To be fair, we've seen it not get that far before.
Let's at least say that we'll have that much confidence in the drivers as we get to the driver to get at least to the start-finish line to take that green flag. But once we take that green flag, the race will not end until those guys make it around to start-finish.
Doesn't matter how many cars make it to the start-finish line, you get the white, and we are going to see a National Speedway. Let's take a look at how the running order is going to be. You look back at Zach Novak. He is going to be the control car. Ryan Luza to his outside would be second. Mullis, Leahy, Ottinger through the top 5, with Conti, Challoner, Davies, Zelensky, and Cook running through your top 10. Looks like 26 cars total going to be scored on the lead lap. And just taking a look back at some of the cars who had been involved in that earlier wreck and this most recent one, I believe of the 39 who started this race, Randy, all 39 cars are still on track now 98 laps later. But we'll find out officially. Are we going to go back green, or is this race going to be done for? The lights are out. A 1-lap shootout coming up from Daytona.
And what a gamble for this, for all of these drivers. You talk about a championship, Evan, that has raised the stakes so much, brought in new teams, of course, new drivers coming in from the Pro Series, all new sponsors, and the big thing, the all-new prize pool of $112,000, and the very first points race of the night, or excuse me, of the season, with the highest purse to win this race. And we're going to decide it on a 2.5-mile sprint to see who can get it done, who can time this restart, and who has people that they can work with and work together. Keep an eye on the 8 and the 88 up top. They're buried a few cars deep, but they are teammates and they are already paired up. This is going to be crazy, and this could have implications not just for tonight, but the way points pan out deep into this championship, Evan. We have seen people have bad Daytonas have to take that as their drop, and it completely kills their season when they have one other bad race later on. But first off, let's see who's getting 1K.
And we certainly know that those drop weeks are valuable, only having one. Keep in mind that we have Talladega added to the calendar, so 2 plate races. You kind of know going into these things that it may not be your night, and well, yeah, you could put yourself in a good position. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and there is a lot left to fade. However, you can certainly not afford a bad Daytona result and a bad Talladega result when you're talking about trying to make the cut to get into the playoffs later this year. This time by, we're going to have 99 laps complete and 1 lap to go for the World Series Racing as we hand out the first checkered flag of 2019. Pace car in, green flag in the air for Zach Novak. 1 lap to go.
Cars fanning out all over the place, 3 wide in your mid-pack. We got cars around, but we still are running and finishing this race under green. So your mid-pack piles up, but about your top 10, top 12, they are able to stay in it, and Zach Novak will be getting pushed. Ryan Luza will lose his help. It might just become down between Zach Novak and Jimmy Mullis if they run off a 2.
And down the back straightaway they come. Luza, no help from second. Zach Novak is able to hang on Jimmy Mullis with that late move to the outside of the racetrack, unable to make the pass coming off of the final quarter. They stayed single file for about as long as they could. Leahy was third in line, never got a chance to make a move to the outside. Mullis knew what he was doing. He pushed the 6 just about all the way, and at the very last second, it was Zach Novak hanging on Mullis to the outside, and the final distance at the line, Zach Novak with the race win over Jimmy Mullis by 0.023 seconds, takes home the win in the Daytona 250, and along with the race by race prize, that's $1,000 for the drive of the 6. We'll take a look now, second look at it right now, and get a second look at what happened there with the number 6 machine. You saw it coming to the white flag. The outside lawn on that 1-lap shootout didn't have any sort of a run at all. Luza restarted second, felt like a brick. The top 4 had a run, but because the 46 stayed in line behind the 6, nobody else was really able to make a move. Leahy kind of had to sit content in third position, and the 46 finally did make that move at a turn 4 and made a good challenge. Got about right up to the right front of the 6 machine, but I think Mullis knew that at that point he didn't really have a shot at it. Probably could have started beating and banging on each other, make some contact at the start-finish line. They opted not to. Instead, though, the 6 machine clean across the start-finish line wins this race and gets the $1,000 payout. Mullis ends up in second position, and Keegan Leahy unofficially as well, ending up in third, will round out your podium. We'll take a quick opportunity to step aside. When we come back, we'll go down trackside and chat with your top finishers. Novak's your winner in a Daytona 250.
teammates can be anywhere in the world, and changing drivers mid-race is as easy as a click of a button. iRacing features team endurance events ranging from just a couple of hours to 24 hours in length. So, if you fancy taking part in an iRacing endurance race in the future, you can learn more about team racing on the teams page on the member website.
And back live from Daytona International Speedway. Again, another look at the last lap of this Daytona 250. The one-lap shootout to the end of caution at 6 laps to go set it up. And it was Zach Novak all the way from the start-finish line back around, courtesy of a great push. Jimmy Mullis, those two stayed loyal to each other for about as long as you could expect. The 46 pushed him all the way down the Daytona super stretch. You saw the outside of the racetrack really did not work out for the number 53 machine as Ryan Michaelusa really trailed with literally no help behind him. He ends up talking a lot about P6. That's where he comes home in this thing. But the late race drama comes out of the final quarter as they ended up side by side coming out of turn 4. The advantage clearly to Zach Novak all the way. The 46 machine, Jimmy Mullis, with an opportunity to make the move when he wanted to, decided to make it off of that final turn. And fortunately for the Zex and unfortunately for him, the move comes a little bit too late. He did have help from Leahy. Don't forget that. 62 Randy pushes him all the way through this thing. But at the end, it's Novak by 0.23. Ends up coming home on top with a win.
And like you said, Keegan pushing him all the way. Jimmy Mullis tried, but he didn't time it quite early enough and didn't have the help he needed. But number 6 Roush car steals a win here at Daytona. Zach Novak's going to find himself a grand richer after 250 miles here at Daytona.
Comes home as the winner with $1,000. Let's take a look top to bottom at your RaceSpotTV full race results. It is Novak over to victory lane. Mullis coming home in second with $500. And Keegan Leahy comes home in third with $250. Alongside Nick Ottinger fourth and Christian Challoner P5. We'll hope to go trackside with all of them in just one moment. Ryan Lewis just misses out on that with a P6 result. Michael Conti finishes in 7th position. Brad Davies is 8th with Bobby Zelensky 9th and Garrett Lowe rounding out your top 10.
Jake Nichols will come home in 11th. Good run from him. 31st up to 11th. Brian Schoenberg in 12th. Chris Overland, your pole sitter, likely disappointed from the pole back to 13th. Malik Ray in 14th and Casey Kerwin in the 15th spot. Matt Busa in 16th. Phil Diaz in 17th. Timmy Hill in 18th. Ray Alfala in 19th. Strong car all night. One mistake took the speed out of that machine. And Eric J. Smith will round out your top 20.
Final couple of cars that end up on the lead lap. It's Kane Cook in 21st position. Ashton Crowder finishes 22nd and Jarl Tien in 23rd. The rest of the cars kind of beat up. It'll be a 24th place finish for Chris Shearburn. Dylan Duvall ends 25th and Cody Bias ends in the number 26 position. Everybody else off of the lead lap. That includes one lap down for P27 Benjamin Nelson, P28 Blake Reynolds, Nathan Lyon in 29th and Brandon Cattell in 30th.
The tail end of your field tonight, 31st, we have Taylor Hurst, Logan Kress in 32nd. 33rd, Michael Garuglia with Adam Benefiel, Nick Shelton, Corey Vincent, Ryan Lowe, Michael Guest, and Casey Tucker.
It'll be a complete look top to bottom at your RaceSpotTV full race results. Let's see if we can now step down trackside and get a word with tonight's race winner. It is the number 6 machine of Zach Novak, who ends up in victory lane this evening. And what a way to kick off 2019 for the Drive of the 6. Zach, congratulations on the win. A race that was looking like for a minute there it would have been determined by strategy, but a late race yellow and a one-lap shootout to decide it. Just tell us what you saw from behind the wheel.
Well, we were kind of off strategy a little bit there from the rest of the field, and we kind of made an audible last second and decided to go in around lap 80, which we figured thought the rest of the field would go in at that point. So big shout out to Logan Sheets for making that audible, and we came in and Jimmy and I got hooked up really well, and we were able to hold the lead from there. I figured it was going to go green as well, but we were set up really good there on that one lap shootout with me P1 and Jimmy P3, and we just kind of had to hold it until Alpha 4 and try to get one of us to win. So I can't thank him enough for working with me there, and man, it's awesome to win at Daytona.
I mean, obviously, you want to start off the season with the trip to victory lane. It makes your life a lot easier, but a lot of people come into this race just hoping to get through it. So to not only be able to, make a splash with your new team, the new colors, and all of that, to go to victory lane on top of this race, a $1,000 prize for winning, I'd call it a pretty successful opening week.
Oh, yeah, it's really successful. I'm really happy to be representing Roush Fenway Racing. They're such a legendary team. And I was just glad to be in the race with their colors on my car and to bring home a win for everybody at Roush, Oscar Mayer, Wyndham Rewards, everybody that supports Roush Fenway. Just awesome.
We've got a long way to go before we start talking about playoffs. However, a race win will put you in the lead headed into the next race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So we know that a lot of drivers are going to start to dig themselves out of a hole. How does coming out on top of the season opener give you an upper hand? And how do you try to play with this lead, work it into the rest of the season? Do you change your driving style at all, playing from ahead? Or do you just try to keep that out of your mind? You go business as usual, try to do it again in 2 weeks?
Well, obviously I want to win races, but the playoffs is a huge thing for me. And with the prize pool being increased and stuff, it's a lot more prestigious per se to make it to the playoffs. So I think points racing is one of the the things I'm better at. I like to just kind of chill and see if things work out my way, and I kind of did that tonight. And so that's my plan for the rest of the season. Is obviously I want to win, but I want to make sure we have a shot at the playoffs come the end of the season. So that's the plan.
Well, the 6 machines certainly looked real sporty tonight, and if it's any indication, we're going to be talking about you a lot through 2019. Zach, we'll let you get out of here. Before we do, anybody else you want to say hi to and thanks for the win?
Yeah, again, I just want to say thanks to everybody at Roush Fenway for giving me this opportunity. Oscar Mayer, Wyndham Rewards, I just want to thank all of them for supporting me, and really happy to be running their colors. I really got to thank Logan Sheets and Taylor Hurst for the work on the setup. We qualified really well tonight, and we got out front there late, and the car was just too good for anybody to make any moves. And I also want to give a big shout out to Michael Guest there for pushing me and keeping me in the lead towards the end. That was the savior, pretty much. He helped me stay out front, so big thanks to him. And I just want to thank everybody behind the scenes that helps put this on and helped myself get to victory lane. It's awesome.
We appreciate the time, Zach. Again, congratulations on the trip to victory lane, and we'll let you jet out of here, but best of luck. We'll catch you in Vegas in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Evan.
He's your $1,000 winner from Daytona. Zach Novak takes home the season opener in the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. Flip side of that battle at the end, Jimmy Mullis, who comes home with the second place result. He's standing by with Randy.
Yep, I'm stood by with the driver of that number 46 Richmond Raceway Esports machine. And Jimmy, absolutely fantastic race from you. Looked pretty calm and cool out there the entire time, out there near the front of the field, and of course tried to make it and go for that race win at the very tail end of that thing. How disappointing is it to become a couple hundredths short?
I wouldn't call it disappointing. Tonight was awesome for Peak and everybody that puts all the hard work behind the scenes into this stuff, and it was also great for me and Zach and everybody at Lockdown Racing. I mean, this is just a fantastic way to kick off the season, and yeah, I mean, we just had a really, really fast car, and that all goes to a big thanks to Logan Sheets and Taylor Hurst, and then Sheets made a great strategy call there at like lap 80. We came in, just me and Zach, and put in enough fuel to make sure we could make it to the end, and just luckily worked out to where we got out front when everything's situated after everybody pit, and yeah, we were just able to hang on. It's incredible.
And talking about the tail end of that thing, we of course had the late race caution, but of course before that, the confusing situation where you had race leaders in amongst some lap cars that, although they had some trouble, I think it was mostly drivers who had been penalized for pit road mistakes. They all had good cars and had good speed, which would have made things really, really interesting getting to the end. Would you have preferred seeing that race pan out with those lap cars in the middle of everything, or did you like the 2-lap run to the finish? Or the 1-lap run to the finish, excuse me.
I think it would have been interesting to see how it played out for sure, but if I'm honest, I'm glad that caution came out because it set me and Zach up perfectly on the restart to where, I could shove him out front, and then when Keegan dropped in behind us, it was pretty much, set because it was just 1 lap. So, like I said, I tried to make a run at it coming out of 4, but the main goal there was just to make sure one of us got it, and that's what ended up happening. So, it's just an awesome night.
Thanks for joining us, Jimmy. Congrats again on a 2nd place and getting yourself an extra $500 to start out the season. Before we let you go, who gets it done for that Richmond Raceway Esports number 46?
Yeah, just got to give a huge, huge thanks to Richmond Raceway Esports, and everybody that's behind that deal. Them picking me is it's an honor, and I'm honored to be a part of this program once again this year. Hopefully, we're going to do big things and try to make a run at the chase. This is definitely a great way to start. Also got to thank Sim Seats and all my teammates at Lockdown Racing. Like I said, we put a great car together, and it showed there at the end. So big thanks to them, and thanks to you guys for the broadcast.
Well, there he was, Jimmy Mullis coming home in the 2nd spot, and Keegan Leahy, that G2 squad, Evan, looked so good all day, but I think he's going to be disappointed just coming home with a P3.
Yeah, certainly you look at the flip side of things, and maybe you tell yourself coming into the race that you're going to get a 3rd place finish, and someone's going to absolutely jump all over that. But when you're so close to maybe having a chance to fight for the win, you would have wanted a little bit more. We're down with the driver who finishes 3rd tonight for G2 Esports, Keegan. Congratulations. It's a great result for you guys. You beat out 36 other cars, but, I mean, being that close at the end, does it leave you with a sour taste in your mouth wanting more, or are you happy to get through this one as you did?
Hey, first of all, thanks so much for the broadcast, Evan, and the rest of you guys. Really nice to be back here. I haven't had an interview here for a little while. I didn't really get too many top 5 finishes, but yeah, like I want to win, of course, but it's Daytona, and honestly, I'm just happy to bring the car home unscathed. I don't think I had any contact the whole race, and I'm happy with 3rd, especially with that payout. I think it's $250 for 3rd place, so I'm taking that.
Yeah, $250 tonight for coming home in 3rd. That'll be the payout for 2nd place everywhere else, but it's Daytona. You got to jack it up a little bit. So you're just certainly not walking away empty-handed, getting a good chunk of the purse in this one. You guys also started up towards the front. Tell us about the early decision on the pit stops, because aside from that late race yellow and subsequent 1-lap shootout, it looked like this race was going to be determined based on whether you did or did not decide to come down to the pit lane 9 laps in. So talk us through that decision and how that kind of played through the race for what was nearly 85 laps after that of green flag racing.
Yeah, it was really hard to predict the future of the race, even though there really wasn't too many cautions. Well, there wasn't any cautions messing up that strategy after lap 9. But it all came down to how your group caught the draft of other groups, and really it was pretty much everyone had the same amount of time on pit road. So yeah, it pretty much came down to how lucky you were with the draft and whether or not you got held up by lap cars or not. And the group I was with, we just happened to get really lucky. We never got held up, and we were just really quick, and I managed to stay in the front of my group the whole time. So I was in that position the whole time with a shot at a win. So really happy for that.
You pocket the money, you move on to Las Vegas Motor Speedway in 2 weeks' time. And, we're not done with the plate tracks like we normally have been. We do have Talladega coming up a little bit later on, but now it kind of gets real. You get into the nitty-gritty. You end up on those intermediate racetracks. Can you take anything from this and translate it into some momentum headed into that? Or is Daytona almost an entirely separate beast? You get through the season opener, and then kind of a new season starts in 2 weeks when we hit the bulk of the schedule.
Well, normally I'd say yes. Daytona is a unique animal, and you have to kind of discount it from the rest of the season. But like you said, we have another plate track coming up, Talladega, and honestly, I think the way the NASCAR, the real life NASCAR tests have looked, if iRacing gets this new 2019 rules package dialed in, it's gonna look pretty much the same, with a lot of really close racing at all the 1.5 miles and 2 miles, the intermediate tracks as well. So I think you're gonna see a lot more of this style of racing, and good thing I'm comfortable with it, because there's gonna be a lot of close quarter racing coming up.
We certainly look forward to see what the bulk of the 2019 calendar has in store for us, but we are finally off the way, and we congratulate you again, Keegan, on the solid result tonight. Thanks for sticking around and chatting, and hopefully we'll have another opportunity to catch up in 2 weeks.
Yeah, great. Let me thank VRS quickly, Virtual Racing School on my hood, and then G2 Esports. Really happy to be a part of that team. It's really cool to be a part of a real esports team, and thanks to everyone who helped me this week, Chris Shearburn and Mitchell DeYoung for spotting.
You definitely showed well for them with that third place finish tonight. That's Keegan Leahy, who comes home at a podium and rounds out the paid positions for this evening, and probably maybe a little bit more sour than on a points per position basis is going to be Nick Ottinger. Just misses out on the podium in all of this, but does end up in 4th position. It is a good result. He's next, standing by with Randy.
Yep, I'm stood by it with the driver of the 47 JTG Daugherty Racing car. And Ottinger, it's a pretty good race from you overall, 15th up to 4th, but you're definitely in the middle of it several times, most notably a late race strategy call of the 4 of you guys peeling off, trying to separate yourself from the pack. Talk me through that decision with about 20 to go.
We had a bad Fast Kroger 0-1 tonight. We're kind of in a little spot where when we came down the first time, we took lefts, and for some reason after dropping the jack, it decided to start filling the car instead of filling it while the jack was up in the air changing the tires. But we don't know why it caused that, but that hurt us time-wise. Probably cost us about 4 or 5 seconds right there. And we're kind of playing a little bit of catch-up right there. But I don't know, man, we had a bad fast car tonight. We almost got a chance to show it near the end with Michael Connie and Christian Challoner. I mean, it was great help with my teammate at the end to get us a top 5. But we wanted more, but we'll take a 4th place tonight.
Now, talking about this championship, you, of course, are one of the more experienced names. We've been talking about the schedule pretty much since we saw the actual lineup, and we talked about it on the draft. You, one of the more experienced drivers, how do you sort of look at this lineup with Talladega in the middle of the sort of regular season and none of the sort of regular 1.5-mile tracks outside of Homestead that we have in the playoffs? How do you sort of look at that as a schedule in terms of the championship? What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, you kind of hit the nail on the head with Dega being in the middle of the season. You want to make sure kind of like tonight, it's kind of a lottery pick to see if you get through the field and avoid a wreck. But luckily we were in a decent spot. We didn't get too much damage in the wreck tonight, but you basically just want to get your season done before you get to Dega. You don't want to have too big of a accident to where it can cost you like a full race right there on the people you're battling. But I mean, we have a long time till we get there. I like to take each race one at a time. They're going to present new challenges, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have a new package this year, considering what NASCAR has been doing to their car this year. So, I mean, we all might be close. We all might be spread out. We don't know.
Thanks for joining us, Nick. Congratulations on getting yourself into the top 4. Unfortunately, that one more, and you would have gotten yourself some money, but hey, can't get everything. But regardless, who gets it done for you and that JTG Daugherty crew?
I really want to thank Christian again for giving us a push at the end. I don't think we would have had any chance really to keep the spot with the damage we had, but I mean, it's great to represent a good team at JTG Daugherty Racing. They're a great team, great people there. They're like family. They've been treating me and Christian really good, and I want to thank Team Connie Chassis for pretty much helping build a car, build a setup, qualifying as well, and thank the guys, Holden, Weaver, for being on the box and the spotter stand, because they done a really good job tonight.
There he was. Nick Ottinger comes home in the 4th spot, and Evan, his teammate pushing him, gets his way up into the top 5 just behind. You're going to be stood by with the number 37 driver, Christian Challoner.
Yeah, one of the best examples of seeing some teammates working together in this one. It is a P5 for Christian Challoner, trackside now with the driver of the number 37 Chevy. Christian, congratulations. Good result for you guys. And taking a look through, I think, end up as the biggest mover on the race, plus 25 from where you started. You get hooked up with Nick there. Tell us about the night.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. I mean, as I just put on Twitter, it's not the first time we've done the back to the front challenge here at Daytona. For whatever reason, we just it's not that we don't build good Q cars, it's just that we never seem to get the run right. We probably get a bit unlucky with the wind direction and stuff, and yeah, we always have to come through from the back, and I mean, it was real tough. About 30 laps in, I was kind of not too happy with where we're at. I felt like we needed to make more progress, but just, I mean, amazing execution by everybody on the box. Awesome strategy, awesome spotting. Everything was right. I mean, we might not have had the outright fastest car out there, but we just didn't put a foot wrong. I mean, it's amazing that we got three top 5s after 3 years of trying, really. I mean, our average finish on plate tracks has got to be kind of incredible compared with the field.
I know that these races could always be funny. You could, easily qualify on pole position and end up on the hook for a couple of races in a row. So, 30th position on the starting grid doesn't make your night a whole lot easier, but it's just the nature of the beast. To be able to find success in this one, almost, I would assume, based, as you mentioned, your track record, maybe bracing for a rough night. How does a P5 set you up nice and pretty headed into next week?
It's always great to start so strong like that. I mean, you don't have to dig yourself out of a points hole. Yeah, we'll go to Vegas and hopefully we'll roll off with a really fast car there, and then we can really show that we can run on 1.5 miles as well. We kind of got it figured out near the end of last season, so we're hoping that we'll run good there again. And then going forward from that, well, I suppose we'll see if there's any changes, because we got a build coming up after that race, and feel like that might shuffle everything again. But yeah, I'm real confident with my guys. They do just an awesome job. I mean, they do more than just help me with the car prep. They help with everything. They help with the social media. They're just keeping me calm in the race and everything. We had our own broadcast going tonight. If anybody checked that out, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was a unique deal for you. Yeah, just really can't believe that we managed to come from pretty much right at the back to top 5 again.
It's a little bit easier to kind of visualize, working with the teammate and helping each other out at a place like this. I'm certain we'll see you guys hooked up once more when we do head to Talladega, which makes its return to the schedule in 2019. Now that we head to the intermediates and the rest of the calendar, what can you rely on Nick and the rest of the team for in some of the races where it's a little bit more difficult to directly help each other out?
I mean, we discussed a little bit before this one of kind of how we were going to run. I mean, if we could hook up, that we were going to work together and all that kind of deal. It sort of unintentionally happened at the end, but I mean, I was real glad to be able to push Nick to a 4th place there. I think that was really cool that we got both the JTD Doherty cars into the top 5. We're real proud to run for them. I mean, we were kind of really talking about it, and we think that we've probably got a really strong driver pairing and a bunch of good guys backing us in terms of the cars and everything. So we're really glad to get that. And yeah, I mean, we'll probably work closely again in the future at a couple of tracks. I don't really know about the 1.5 miles and so on, but yeah, we got a good relationship. Me and Nick get on, and we can help each other out for sure.
We look forward to seeing that. I know it was a long and hard-fought night, so we'll let you get out of here, Christian. But again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in Vegas.
Thank you.
That is your 5th place finisher tonight from Daytona International Speedway. Big thanks to race winners Zach Novak, Jimmy Mullis, Keegan Leahy, Nick Ottinger, Christian Challoner, all for sticking around and letting us pick the brains a little bit at the end of this race and giving us some insight on another exciting season opener in the bank, Randy. Now we look forward to the more, I don't know if tame is the right word, but the intermediate racetracks and the ones that you're going to have to be a warrior on. Those are where the results are going to have to come from if you were going to be a serious contender for this 2019 title.
I don't know, as we're going to actually take a peek as well at our last lap, just get a replay of it. You see Zach Novak just It was very close as he comes off a 4, but other than that, Jimmy Mullis challenges as best he can, but Zach Novak holds on for that $1,000. But I don't know if you call it tame, Evan. Las Vegas Auto Club in Texas, 3 very racy racetracks for these guys. Richmond to follow that up as well at the beginning of April on the 9th. And then just 2 weeks after that, we go back down to Alabama for the first time in a long time and hit the 2.6-mile super speedway of Talladega Super Speedway. So it might seem tame compared to what we had tonight, but I think this first stretch of the championship is not so tame. I think the second half of the regular season is where things start to sort of simplify themselves.
It'll certainly have, a lot more technical racetracks on that back half. You're going to see the likes of, road racing. Of course, we mentioned the Roval in the playoffs. And look over that final lap again, where Novak comes out on top of Mullis by 23 1/1000ths of a second to get the race win in this one. Of course, Watkins Glen and other racetracks that have quickly become staples on this calendar are still to come. So I think that it is a good mix of the two. Talladega being added to the calendar, going to be a ton of fun. But, watch for the top 5. The guys that we just had a chance to talk to, Novak, Mullis, Leahy, Allinger, Chandler, see what they can do with the points they got out of tonight's finish. See if they can make this work into the next couple of weeks. And I think most importantly, that we know that this ain't going to be their drop week.
Yeah, definitely. They're going to be happy with this. And that's really the big thing. Like we said, these plate tracks, not uncommon for these drivers to come out and have less than ideal finishes. And when you look at Ray Alfala in 19, that could potentially be a season worth finish for him. And the fact that there's another plate track that he's traditionally here, Evan, not had very good luck. He won a handful of these races, I think a couple in the beginning points of this championship in the early years of it. But in the last 3 or 4, he seems to just have the short side of Lady Luck on the super speedways, and if he carries that into Talladega as well, it could make for a very difficult championship for him through the first segment. He'll need to be almost picture perfect throughout every other round in order to make up for it, if that happens.
Certainly if. And the good news is they've got a couple of weeks to hold off until then, but that does it for us here tonight from the World Center of Racing. A lot of people that we need to thank for making all of this possible, for East Van Hallow and TrackCams22.com for the track cameras, Inward Designs for the broadcast graphics, Simon Grossman on the broadcast CG, and also Nick Thiessen on the live timing. For the entire team tonight on RaceSpotTV, for Justin Prince on background support, our director Hugo Louise, for Randy Cheneth and myself, Evan Pasoko, want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Zach Novak, your Daytona 250 winner, walks out of here with $1,000 cash in his back pocket. We'll catch you next time out Tuesday, February the 26th, live from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. That one goes at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, right here on RaceSpotTV and the iRacing Esports Network. Until next time, good night from Daytona.